I'm a bad mode, gotta keep it tight. Hold my baby squid, keep him out of sight. Talking about my life, government, stay away. If you drive, I'ma do it my own way. Squid in the ocean, swimming all alone. Ain't nobody telling me where to go. Living free, gotta stay true to myself. No need for interference from anyone else. Squid pro quo, that's the way to be. Living on my terms, setting myself free. Mama to my baby, protecting with my no government intrusion. I control my life.
Hey everybody, I don't know why it started out like this. Hey everybody, how are you doing? Sorry about that. I have technical issues today. But how is everybody doing? I have hair issues. It's a bad hair day. My hair is clean. It's just up and ugh. But hope everybody is having a wonderful day. It's a Sunday. It's been a weird day around here. Been a weird day. I'm looking for something. I've been looking for something all day. Haven't been able to find something that's quite important to me. And I looked in a thing and I found this. I mean, if this is not a sign of good things to come, I have been looking for this necklace since the day baby squid was born. I have not been able to find it. I took it off when I went into the operating room. And excuse my horrible nails. Yeah, looking for money, King Bob. I'm always like, that's a daily search. That's a daily search that never seems to happen. However, I was looking for something and I decided to look in a bag that I swore I had looked in when I was searching for this 1,000 times. And lo and behold, I got my necklace back. It needs to be cleaned because the chain is looking a little dingy because it's probably been in that bag for 3 years, but I swear I looked in that bag. So I haven't seen that necklace in 3 years. So that's the sign for good things to come. Now, if I can just find what I was looking for originally, which I'm going to need Musie's help with. So if calling Musie to the chat, calling Musie to the chat, if anybody sees her, tell her I'm looking for her. And Ung Hung Hero, thank you for getting us started with 20 Squid Pro Quo memberships. I appreciate you. Always turning the chat green and the $2 super chat, greening up the chat. I hope you are doing wonderful and give your better half my best. I hope you're both doing well. And I hope that necklace is a good sign of things to come for you as well, my friend. And hey, Janice. Sweet Fly, good morning to you, my friend. I promise I will have the attention span of someone longer than a fly, so no one makes fun of you or makes fun of me and then has to apologize to you. Janet, Heather, King Bob, it's so good to see you. Nick, good afternoon, your royal squidness. Oh, speaking of royal squidness, I found my shellback card today, so I will show that to you guys if I escape this room and go grab something because I might need to grab something to drink later. I will grab my shellback card and show my shellback card too. So, hello. Oh my God. Go ahead. Good afternoon, everyone. Hey, Mom. Good afternoon from the other side of my office. For those of you, Mama Squid is in the chat, but Mama Squid is right here. And excuse my fatness today. Spawn Trooper, hey, Musa lady. Squid is looking for you. I know. I know. That's so weird. I found a cross that I haven't seen since the day I went into labor, because I never thought like to take off my necklace when I went to the hospital, thinking that I was gonna have a C-section and operating room, no jewelry. You know, you can do the math on that one. But like it's interesting. I had to turn that down a little bit. It's just what a weird day. Roy, I hope you are doing well today. How are you? And Spawn, nice to hear from you again. Yes, full disclosure, my mom and Spawn had like a 45-minute phone conversation this morning as I'm sitting there. Go like, yep, they had a conversation. I wasn't involved. Hey, She Nemesis. How are you? Happy Sunday. All right, we're going to get straight into this. Spawn, if you would like a link, I will send one to you because we are going to get into, if you can show up, great. If you can't, no worries. I get it. Sundays are for family time, and for Sundays are not only for family time, but they're for getting stuff done. So let me send you a link. And I don't know why I didn't do it earlier when I said I was going to, even when you said that you originally couldn't make it. But because we are going over the there we go. We are going over more of day one of the hearings. And I know that people have messaged me a lot about, oh, this happened on day 2, this happened on day 3. I know some of the things that have happened. We're not going to get into it because I do want to wait until I do want to wait until we get to that point. Hey, Spawn Trooper, or the Grinch, harbinger of truth. How are you today?
Oh, I'm good. Busy. But bollocks, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yeah. Hello, everybody. It is I, the sheep-shagging Welshman, who has found out so much new information in regards of adoptions. Oh, yeah. But anyway.
Oh, yeah. There was some things. We were talking this morning, and I'll tell y'all, chat. I was shopping at Walmart when I was on the phone, and like I'm thinking, okay, that's it. I'm like, okay, I have to think about, because I don't really pay attention to some of a lot of the outside stuff because I don't care. It's not my focus. However, every time I'd think that was it, he goes, and wait, there's more. And then it'd be like he'd tell me more about some paperwork, and then it'd be like, nah, oh, and there's more. And then he'd say it again, and he'd talk about another part, and like a notary and a lawyer, and then he'd go, and that's not even the best part. And it's like, wait, there's more. And like it was a half an hour of a conversation of like, just wait, there's more. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to actually look at these and actually like hear more and see more than just a short conversation. But it's fascinating. Oh my goodness.
Put it this way. First of all, I know that you're doing the NTSB thing here today, but let me put it this way. Isn't there a conflict of interest if someone is dealing, say, for example, if someone is a lawyer, but they're also a notary, or and they deal with one case as a notary, but also as the lawyer? Isn't there a conflict of interest?
Yeah, and also for those of you who followed Maya Kowalski and know Judge Hunter Carroll out of the Maya Kowalski case, when Spawn was talking, knowing nothing about the Maya Kowalski case, starts talking about Judge Hunter Carroll, and I'm like, oh, Judge Carroll makes an appearance in this, so like, there's another plot twist.
And also, selling a property, okay, that door's closed. Selling a property is quite interesting, but why is there a second adoption? Allegedly. And why is someone who is heavily involved with the adoption of a certain young child, right? You know, not just the lawyer, but the notary, but also ends up on someone's live stream discussing said adoption. Oh, me thinks there's a lot of shit on its way coming up from the sewers. Yes, it is.
Yeah, and some of the documents that I was looking at, I didn't share them on my screen because they were sent to me anonymously, and I'm not sure that I'm supposed to have them. So I didn't share them publicly. I talked about them while I was, plus there was so much to redact that I wasn't about to like try to redact all of that. Otherwise there'd be nothing to, there'd be nothing to show. I'd have to redact all of it. But that being said, I can't believe that I didn't catch that the notary's name and the lawyer's name were the same.
I did.
I'll have to look. Gail, it is Florida. So, I mean, it is Florida, man.
I did bring it up multiple times. I went, there's something not right here, but I was told on multiple occasions
I know,
that
but I was looking at the documents and my brain didn't even catch it. So, regardless of what anybody else says, and like, I was looking at the documents, at least the ones that I have. I have very few, but I have some. And I didn't even catch it myself. However, I can't wait till you discuss that on your stream. I think it will be interesting what you have to say in if you ever decide to talk about it. When you decide to talk about it, but we are going to move on to the topic at hand.
Yes. Obviously, I don't want to stay on too long because I've got things to do. However, two things I'm going to point out. Sorry to derail it a little bit. One, I will probably, I do believe that the information has already been publicized somewhere, not sure where, don't really care. But one thing I can confirm is that certain individual has previously, many years ago, identified herself. There is a screenshot where she identifies herself as Ruby. However, uses a different name. And also, then everything that I've discussed in regards to that, there is now a coalition between 4 different surnames. So try to dig yourself out of that one. And there's been a bankruptcy as well in 97, 8, 98, but that's beside the point.
Well, so going back to this, in the document we have from the bankruptcy last month, there's no, she said no to ever filing a bankruptcy before. So, there's that.
Yeah. And also she has used the name, and I quote, and I've got evidence of and proof of this. She has used the name in the last 8 years, right? The name of Michelle Cook. But she's also used very other surnames in the last 8 years. And I think it was the last 7 years she had to put information up there of what names she's used, aliases she's used in the last 7 years or 8 years. Is that correct? Anyway, we digress.
I think 7 years. I'm not sure.
So
good morning, crazy. How are you?
The NTSB report here, this one here, obviously I haven't caught up yet, but I am glad that this report is out, because now we can actually get into the nitty gritty and a lot of stuff that you and I discuss privately and also on streams. Now it's going to sort of open up like a rose.
And Papa Squid's in the chat as well. We are going to get started. We should hopefully today finish panel 1 and get into panel 2. Panel 1, for those of you who weren't joining us during the first 2 streams, panel 1 was about the altimeter data. And we left off with me being frustrated and wanting to beat my head up against a wall with the people asking questions, starting to ask questions that aren't related to these individuals' knowledge level or the reason they're here. They've started to ask questions about maintenance records and things like that. Not any of these people's area of expertise. And also you can tell that the people asking questions have never been in the military, because the 3 U.S. Army individuals are asking or are looking at them like, of course shit takes forever. Like, it's the military. Like, shit takes twice as long as it does in the civilian world. Like, have you not done this before? You can tell they don't have any experience with military or anything of the sort, which is not only infuriating, but they're not taking no for an answer. They're asking questions in a different way to try to elicit like a lawyer would, and you're not going to get the answer because there is no answer. All right, so we're going to start back. We're halfway through day 1, essentially. And we are watching at 1.35 speed. So if they talk a little fast, that's why.
We would put it immediately in the airworthiness release that would go fleet-wide.
Okay, but manual, that update begins in 2028.
So, I'm sorry, 2028 is the form that is submitted to make an operator's manual change, not the calendar year 2028.
Okay. But 2028.
No, ma'am.
Okay, please be very clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Alert manual.
So manual, there's a process that uses a form 2028. And that form 2028, if it's determined it needs to go into the operator's manual, we would submit that by the September 15th timeline. When it goes into the process of upgrading operator's manual, that I can't speak to the specifics. I can get you the specific timelines of how when an operator's manual would be updated.
Thank you very much.
I apologize for the confusion.
No, that's okay. Transponder, let's say you're at 260 or 270 feet. What would DCA tower see?
So, ma'am, at 260 feet, the tower should see 300.
Great.
But they get pressure altitude as opposed to what the pilot sees.
Yeah. And 230 or 240?
It should be 200.
Okay.
But there's a plus or minus 40 around the midpoint.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Appendix A, Brian, if you can pull that up real quick. So we have a compilation of essentially error allowances. 2 in the static system, 1, 2, 3 barometric altimeter encoder. Well, actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different standards for the barometric altimeter. We've got the ESSS. We've got a clean configuration of the Lima. Are any of these additive?
Yes, ma'am. Some are additive and some are not, the way the table's laid out. So, for example, the encoder is not part of what the pilot sees. So that's not additive, but there are the instrument errors. The errors inside the instrument tend to be random and they can combine. But so, for example, if you had a 30-foot scale error and a 25-foot barometric setting scale error, you would combine those through a method called the root sum of squares, and you would get roughly that's a 39-foot expected error range.
And
so some of them are additive. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. For what the pilot is seeing, are any of these additive?
Yes, ma'am. So the instrument errors, and those are the ones you're verifying on the ground when you do the pre-flight check or when you do the pedostatic check. Then you have to, when you take off in flight at a particular flight condition, you have a position error, a static position error, and those are additive. They can be different. So one can be positive and one can be negative, and they can cancel each other out or they can add to each other, but they are additive.
Okay, and does it depend, could it be different by helicopter or is that fleet-wide?
Ma'am, so the instrument error would be different by altimeter. So the
By
right side and
altimeter.
the left side altimeter could have different instrument errors. It's just a random, it's a mechanical error inside the device. But the position error, so for example, the position error at a particular airspeed for a particular flight condition is the same for all the helicopters.
Okay, thank you very much. I will ask Member Graham next. Member Inman.
Mr. Rosenberg, is your department or your agency, are you responsible for all updates in regard to even maintenance, or is it just flight standards?
So my organization is the Utility Helicopter Project Office, and so we're responsible for acquiring new Black Hawk helicopters, and then we coordinate with our life cycle management program, the AMCOM, Aviation Missile Command.
So Heather, in response to your question, the woman asking the questions is like the chairperson for the NTSB panel, or there's the NTSB panel of investigators, and then there's a technical panel of subject matter experts, and then there's the witnesses across from them. The people asking questions right now, or the chairwoman, she's kind of got a little bit of an attitude. I kind of like her attitude, but at the same time, she's started to ask questions that aren't related to these individuals' technical knowledge. So she's starting to get on my freaking nerves. And then the one guy who was asking questions before was actually talking about his PTSD with the fact that he has UH-60s flying over his house and he had to move. And it was like, I don't care about we're here to figure out why this accident happened and why 67 people lost their lives. I don't need to hear about the NTSB's investigators' PTSD overseeing the end of a runway. That's not what we're here for. I don't give a shit about people's feelings in this case. I want answers. That's why we're doing this. But like, the link that I posted was to the docket. It is public. So all the documents that they're referring to are on there. Some of them Spawn and I will be going through at various times after the completion of this panel, but there are 205 docket entries. Some of them are thousands of pages. So we will see. Yeah. She's asking him questions that are not within
I think that's the biggest issue, because, sorry to interrupt, I think that's the biggest issue due to the fact that they're going through this with a fine tooth comb, and there are a crap load of pages on some of the topics they're going to be discussing, and it's just going to be mind-boggling for people who don't understand the terminologies or, the investigative type of, like, why did it happen, where did it happen, what was this, what.
And Heather, that's what we're here for. I'm here to answer questions that within my capability. I'm not going to say I'm a subject matter expert on pitot tubes. I have touched them before. I've seen them, I've touched them, I know what they do. But the technical specs of them, especially on a Helo, is not my area of expertise. That was the AE's job. I was an AT. However, they're starting to ask, these people are technical experts on the helicopter from a airworthiness. In the description of the video, I have who each of these witnesses are and where they're from and why they're there, what their area of expertise is. With that being said, if you look at what their area of expertise is, and you hear the questions that they're being asked at this particular time, they're starting to not make sense. They're starting to get into things that are outside their area or the scope of practice, so to speak. And it's starting to eat at me, and I'm starting to get annoyed with it, because it's like, and you can see Scott Rosengren is starting to get annoyed with it too. And when you said it seemed like she was trying to keep him on track, yes, in a way, but he was answering her question as far as his area of expertise. She didn't understand the forms necessary and the timeline necessary, but she thought she did. There was the don't ask a question if you don't have some idea of the answer. And when you get an answer, don't act like the person who is telling you is telling a lie, because that's what she responded with. She responded with, let me rephrase the question. Just because you didn't understand his answer doesn't mean he was not giving you a correct answer. You are just asking him a question that is outside his scope of practice. So
can I just interject very quickly?
Of course.
Right, guys. For people who don't understand the difference of what a pitot is, okay. Here's the first link. Okay, this will take you to explanation. And the second link here is also from a different site. They are safe. I've been on them. Right, here's another link to give you an explanation what a pitot and the airflow and everything about it. So my advice is, if there's something you don't understand, okay, like we said, we're not subject experts, but we do know about some of the equipment. The
Yeah.
best way to do is just basically type in, oh, what is a flight data recorder, or what's a flight voice recorder? And then just put in, what's a flight voice recorder? And you will get very good explanations of what is. Yeah. So go and check those. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and also we're here to answer questions and make these hearings a little bit more interesting, because when you're interested and you understand things, you can pay attention a little bit better, because when you don't understand something, you tune out, and when you tune out, it gets boring, and then valuable information that might be good for you to know as a general public, a general member of the general flying public, we don't get to hear. So I will answer questions as as I can, but I'm not here to be a professor. I'm not here to preach to you what I think is right and wrong. And I'm not going to make this like a college class, because if we wanted to do that, you all would just pay to go to college. And we're here to be entertaining and kind of make this interesting and fun. However, that being said, we might crack jokes, we might say things. However, we are cognizant and we are respectful of the fact that 67 people lost their lives, including the people who I believe caused the problem to begin with. So always be aware that people in this situation did die, including 11 or 12 children. So, and their families are listening to this. I just didn't appreciate a member of the NTSB in a public setting, in a professional setting, talking about how he has PTSD over this. That's not an appropriate place and time to discuss your feelings. Like,
No. And just for the record, for people who have the theoretical issues of understanding what was being discussed, I have found a video where it will actually show you and talk you through what happens in the PTOP. So,
and Janet, thanks for the $5 super chat. You make this very interesting. I try. I mean, because at the end of the day, like, I went to school military school for a lot of this. Pitot tubes were not on my area of expertise. They were AEs. I was an AT. Both worked on electronics. We just had different focuses. So I understand some of the things. It's been 19 years. So yes, I'm not old, but I am that old. It's been 19 years since I went to school for this. So it's just a skill fade problem too. So I'm not, but if I don't know something, I'm not going to blow smoke up your butt and say what it is if I don't know. There's that too. But
I mean, excuse me. I mean, there's a lot of, I don't even know how to say this. The biggest issue when it comes to these NTSB reports, they're very detailed, extremely detailed, to be very frank. And there's a lot of information that can richly send you into like a spiral of confusion. And the best thing is like, if they use diagrams and visual aids to explain what's going on, try to concentrate on that. And if you don't understand, ask. No question is a stupid question, unless you ask.
The stupid question is the one that you don't ask.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm looking at this wiki about the PTOP tube, and you got a simple one, you got a static source, and then you got PTOP static tube. So you've got, it's quite weird, interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot of. There were some questions that were asked about the placement, and it's like, you tell me you've never been around an aircraft without telling me, like, the placement. Well, why was it placed there? Because that's the best place that you're going to get without it being easily damaged by people getting in and out. Like, it's just, how dumb do you think? Like, it's not, we don't live in an ideal world. Sometimes you have to make do with what you got.
I mean, if you think about it, on a 777, for example, on a Boeing 777, right? They are right underneath on the belly, right underneath the cockpit. You've got 3 of them. You've got 2 very close together, and then you've got a third one, you know. So you got the pilot, the co-pilot one, and a redundancy. So.
It's just funny that some of these questions, I'm looking at them and I'm like, either I am more knowledgeable in some of these situations and some of these things that I think, or that I'm giving myself credit for, or these people are asking really stupid questions. Like,
well, maybe they're,
I don't know.
maybe you got the wrong people asking the wrong questions to the right. You know, it's because I've noticed that in the last time, you know, questions are being asked, and someone asked the question twice, but worded it differently to that guy right to the far left. You remember on the other night?
Yeah.
Where he was being asked a question and he had to repeat himself, even though the question was the same thing. They asked the same question, but just worded it differently.
Yeah, I think that was the question about, well, what about the placement, and is there a place to something about the placement of it? Is that the place to put it to get the most accurate information? Well,
Yeah, and also the
not
fact that they do
particularly. However, it's the only place to put it. It's the place to put it with the most accurate information where it's not going to get easily damaged, because those tubes are thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So if you put it beside the door, which might be the best place to put it as far as accuracy, you're right next to a door gunner. So if you put it in the wrong spot, it might get shot. Your people getting
and
in
that's
and out.
another thing that I have. Yeah, and that's another thing. Sorry to interrupt again. That's another thing that's pissed me off, because any course that you've been on or that we've been on, right? We've done a course on the subject matter. Like if it's an armored APC, if it's an IFV, if it's an MPT, or for you it's an aircraft or whatever. The fact that they actually put a picture of the wrong aircraft in the actual NTSB report instead of actually putting a UH-60, a Black Hawk version.
They put an SH-60 Seahawk.
And they ended up putting a Seahawk in there. And that triggered me, because, you know, if you're going to do a report on something, for crying out loud, you're going to use the correct aircraft to identify, right, here, this is where the PTOTs are, this is where this is where that is. And I think when he answered that question, he actually stated that, by the way, is not the correct aircraft, but in fact that is a Seeking, you know, and
it's same platform. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Helos, I've never worked on Helos. However, the UH-60 Blackhawk and the SH-60 Seahawk are the same basic airframe. However, they are built for obviously two different missions. One thing that's different is the tail folds. I don't know if a UH-60 Blackhawk folds.
No.
Being on a ship, we are limited on space, so the tail folds. The pitot tubes are different. They are more like, so the tubes, Gail, you asked what they're made of. They're just metal, but they have sensors in them, and they measure. They have air. They need to be faced forward for one. So on our aircraft, if the opening was up, you needed to go and change it. The pilots would know that they weren't getting accurate information on the ground, and you'd have to go and adjust the tube so that it was facing forward, so that they could get airflow. Because if you don't get airflow through a pressure tube, you're not going to get any pressure. So I'm not an expert in that area, but like common sense would tell me, based on the information that I do know, if you don't have airflow through it, you're not going to get any accurate readings at all. So if the air holes are faced up, they're not going to work. So you got to turn it so they're faced forward, so that the airflow, you get airspeed, or when you're moving, air goes into it and it can measure the pressure. I don't exactly know how it measures pressure, but there's electronics attached to it. Just not my area of expertise. And we had a lot on the plane I worked on.
Can I just-
We had a lot. I worked on a E2. E2 is an AT's dream/nightmare. That whole plane was made for us. AEs, mechs, and airframes were just there to make sure the shit still flies. Like I was, my rate was the center of attention on that plane. We were the whole purpose was AT. That's where my ego comes from.
Just a quick one. A pitot tube is typically made of stainless steel or for its durability and resistance to corrosion. Depending on the application, it may also be constructed from brass or even plastic. The choice of material depends on the fluid being measured, its temperature, pressure, and potential corrosive properties. Stainless steel is a common choice due to its strength, resistance to rust, and ability to withstand a wide range of temperatures and pressures. Brass, and it goes into. I hereby bring you more links. I am going to post a link now, and that will tell you everything you need to know about a pitot tube. And basically, and it gives you all the different information if you want to do a little bit of research on that. So
And
there
I
you
am
go.
gonna get this started again because I want to make it through this one because the next panel I'm really interested in because it's the overview of the airspace and the helicopter routes, which is one of the things that I'm super interested in.
Yep.
And on the sustainment of the aircraft. And so we do not have maintenance standards that we own. We're an acquisition organization, not an operational organization.
So you buy stuff, you don't use it?
So we buy stuff and then we work with our sister commands to make sure that it's used in accordance with the acquirer's maintenance procedures.
Okay, so you're in charge of acquisitions, is that right?
Yeah, so we're part of the Assistant Secretary of the Army for the Acquisition, Logistics, and Technology. And so we're the acquisition arm of the Army.
So just help me understand this then. Why does the acquisitions department issue airworthiness directives?
So the acquisition, we do not. We get them from our independent airworthiness organization. So
You keep pointing to the gentleman to the right,
So Mr. Braddom is my chief airworthiness engineer. So
but he reports to you, right?
he does not know, sir. He's
No,
in
sir. Just for clarification, sir, I'm the chief airworthiness engineer, and I work in Futures Command in the Combat Capabilities Development Command Aviation and Missile Center in a group called the Systems Readiness Directorate. So Army Airworthiness Authority is delegated from the commander of Aviation and Missile Command to the director of the Systems Readiness Directorate. So I report through Futures Command, not through the
My
program.
apologies. I thought earlier in the testimony you said my bosses and you pointed to the left.
Oh,
So often the acquisition, we will task them to give us independent recommendations. That's probably why the gesture might have been that way. So when I tasked Mr. Brown's organization to give me a recommendation, that was probably, if I recall, maybe
Have you tasked his organization to give you any other recommendations regarding this accident?
many, yes, sir.
What were they?
I'd have to go through the records. I'd be happy to provide you all the taskings we've done. I believe we've shared.
Tell me you don't know the military chain of command and how shit works without telling me. Prime example right there.
A lot of tasks, a few tasks, 2 tasks?
There's many tasks. When Mr. Parker would make a recommendation, we would funnel it through our program executive officer, General Phillips, and then we make sure we get all the requests from this acts investigation, give it highest priority, and make sure that we get it tasked and recorded for saving the records for this investigation.
Okay. Will you be on another panel, Mr. Rosenberg?
No, sir, but I'll be here all week.
Yeah, thanks.
Did you just call him Mr. Rosenberg? Because that's not his name.
Okay. I'm going to be done for.
To be honest, I don't know. I'm doing all the research
Um,
for the pitot.
I have a few just that I want to make sure I get back to. For Sikorsky, what's the prime item developments? What is a prime item development specification?
That is the document with the government conveyed its requirements to us.
Okay, and when you're doing testing and you certify it goes through design and certification, correct? Your helicopters?
It's designed and then we provide the reports. Ultimately, the
Okay.
Army has airworthiness ownership.
And so the documents you provided, does it include all these allowable allowances for errors?
The report that we've cited to the investigative team identifies the error curves for altitude, yes.
The report, and that was provided to the Army?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay, so my question is, was FAA aware of any of this? Or the testing that was done, was that a surprise to the FAA of what was done and what the outcome was?
I do not know.
Oh, I'm not asking
Oh,
you.
sorry.
I'm actually asking the FAA.
Which,
You should not answer that question.
which testing are you referring to?
The tests that were done on May 15th on the formation flight.
And
I'm sorry, let me quit. The report I was talking about was from
Yeah, I know.
1983. Okay.
I'm not, it's a totally different question. I'm getting a few of my straggler questions here.
yeah, so I'm familiar with those reports that came out of the May 15th battalion flight tests. I didn't have access to any of the, I'll say the original Sikorsky data to form any opinion on the results.
Okay, thank you. Member Graham. Member Inman.
I'd just like to go back to
what
Mrs. Lewis.
Yep.
why the hell does she not turn around and say, oh, question for Lance Grant or Gant, FAA, or question for Kylene Lewis, whatever, question for, why does she go, no, this was for, that's really unfucking professional as a lead investigator.
Yeah, she's the chairwoman of this committee, and she I don't know.
Yeah, sorry, I just thought I'd point that out.
Yeah, I noticed it too. It seems like she got agitated, and she got agitated with that last question with Mr. Rosengren, and ever since then she's been off her game. Before that, she wasn't as bad, if I'm remembering correctly. But she got agitated when he didn't answer her question the way she wanted it. She got an attitude. And then there's a difference between being stern and asking questions and having an attitude. And she just had an attitude at that last question. And ever since then, she's been like off her game. Like he got under her skin for no reason at all. It's weird. It's like random things get under people's skin for no freaking reason at all. And like they lose their minds and go ape shit for no reason. That's what seemed to happen to her, and now she's like flustered. I don't know. Hi.
I think all the board members were offered, and I believe we all took the opportunity to do a simulation in the Lima or the Mike model and to wear night vision goggles. And it was very apparent as we were doing that, the instructor pilots next to us were talking us through what they would see. So we've actually seen the entire route, which is pretty disturbing whenever you look at it that way. My question to you is they were talking to us and we're looking through night vision goggles. You have to look out of the night vision goggles, if I'm correct, to be able to check your altitude?
Yes, that would be correct.
And earlier you said that you'd be checking your radar altimeter and your baro altimeter if you're at an MSL of 200?
Yes.
Is it a complicated task to be looking at two separate altimeter readings while at the same time using night vision goggles that prohibit your view by 40 degrees? And an iPad, sorry, that has ForeFlight along with the ADS receiver that's remote?
Sorry, in that situation at that low altitude, I would not be referencing an iPad. I would have that put away. But I mean, it does take some practice and experience to get used to cross-checking the instruments while flying goggles at a low altitude.
How much practice and experience would you need?
I think it would vary by the individual.
So let me just clarify that again. And the chair brought up a good point regarding the iPad, which has the ForeFlight, which is where their charts are supposed to be, correct?
That's correct.
So let me go back to, you have a night vision goggles on with a 40-degree field. We now need to check the radar altimeter, the baro altimeter, but we don't need to be looking at the iPad?
As I had said before, I haven't flown this particular route, but at that low of an altitude, in my experience, I would want to know the route that I was on that close to the ground and not have to be looking inside the aircraft in an iPad.
So with the instruction as a standardization pilot, would the instruction be to not have aviators look at their iPad, which has the charts on it?
In my experience, at that altitude, I would not want someone inside the aircraft looking at an iPad.
Well, can we hold until panel 3 on
Yeah,
that
that's
one?
fine.
And then if you'd like, we could recall the witness.
I boomered it, muted myself. Like, I get the feeling this was a panel that very few wanted to be a part of. Yeah, it's one of those things. I don't think that she particularly wants to be here. Oh, I caught her with an eye roll. It's great. I originally wasn't sure that this particular woman wanted to be here. However, the more she answers questions, and I think that she's making.
Yeah, I mean, like I actually jumped on because her ladiness was in the garden, so I am, but she just looked at me and
AKA the
Says,
warden
"Hmm,
lady with the pan, demanded I go. You have a good day. I appreciate
yeah."
you hanging out.
So I do apologize. I would love to get in depth in this, but it is a cast iron act. But we'll chat, and then for the next stream we'll definitely get into it in depth.
Yep. And this lady, she's making the chairwoman look like an idiot because she's making them all look like an idiot because she's like, well, the charts are on an iPad. Yeah, but if you knew that route, I would not be wanted to do all that and look at an iPad, which means common sense would tell you that you would have studied this route prior to getting in the aircraft. At that low of an altitude, it is not safe to be constantly looking at your iPad. Just like I would assume it's like driving and texting, right? Like looking at your iPad with night vision goggles, with looking at two different altimeters. You would not, that would be extra attention that you would not want to be doing. So you would study your route prior.
Well, that's what before I shoot off. That is what they call a pre-flight an instrument briefing. Is basically every pilot and co-pilot they sit down together and they go through the flight paths. What heights they have to fly at, what speeds. What restricted no fly zones and stuff like that. So that's a pre-flight briefing. It's just like when you finish your flight, you got a post-flight debrief. So. I mean, the thing is, you hear and you see people like when they show videos of, the pilots may have like an iPad or they may have a phone and stuff like that, but some pilots do use iPads for taxiways, for runways, for flight information, airport information, so yeah, she seems to be, I don't know.
She seems to be annoyed with the fact that they don't know what she sees as basic common knowledge and common sense. Pre-flight briefings. That's why we have a ready room. That's why we sit and we talk about, well, we don't. I didn't, but the pilots did talk about what they were doing, how long they were going to be gone, how much fuel they were going to use, like what their weight was going to be at takeoff, what their weight was going to be when they landed, like how long they were going to be gone, what they needed to do when they got back.
Exactly. I mean, it's just like if when we used to take vehicles out, if we used to take IFVs out or APCs or whatever you want to call them, each drivers and commanders were responsible to ensure that they were at a briefing, so they knew what routes they were taking, what where they would turn off, and what information to give if there's an accident or a track loss or if there's an incident. And basically, everyone had to go through it. And after the brief, they would have to sign that they attended that brief.
The only, if I were her, and obviously I'm not on national news in front of millions of people possibly watching, in front of an NTSB panel being grilled with questions, but I would have said that would be something that they would have discussed in that pre-flight briefing. You might want to look at that.
Yeah. I mean, it's common sense. I know that. Anyone who flies will know that. And you'd think someone from the NTSB or part of the chair or part of the bench up there, they should all know that, there is a pre-flight briefing.
Yeah. And if I were this officer, if I were Chief Lewis here, I would be like, this being hindsight being 2020, me sitting in front of a computer watching versus her being in the spotlight, I would have just said that would be discussed in their pre-flight briefing, which there should be a record of.
Yeah.
King Bob, anybody with common sense notice. It's good. I would definitely agree. Need to keep your eyes on the road driving or flying a helicopter or plane. I also agree that the woman in uniform is smarter than the woman asking questions. Yeah, when this panel first, or when these witnesses first came up, when I knew she was the pilot, I was like, okay, we'll see how this goes. She acts like she doesn't want to be here, But the more she talks, the more I'm like, now I understand why she doesn't want to be there, is because she has the same attitude that I do. Like, that don't ask me stupid questions and you won't get a stupid answer and a fucking attitude. Like,
Yeah, but you're always going to get people who are going to cause that type of issue in a briefing like this. You know, you've had it when you served. I had it when I served. There's always someone who you know, either woke up without and left their brain at home, or I don't know. It's common sense is I believe now common sense. I consider now a swear word when people use that. You know, and when you get, oh my God.
Zach. Hey, Zach, how are you? Good to see you. Yeah, common sense not so common, but you get that in college too. Like the first day of college when the professor hands you or first day of class, professor hands you a syllabus, and you get people asking questions about the syllabus, but the syllabus is sitting right in front of them. Well, when are we going to do this? I don't know. Look at the mother syllabus and find out. Like,
anyway, my dearest friend and everybody, I have to take my leave. I'm going to love you and leave you, and just remember.
Say hi to the boss for me.
I shall. I shall. And just remember, with this type of topic, all the advice I can give you is step out of that box, take the blinders off, listen to what's said, and if you don't understand, ask a question, because at the end of the day, it's more important for you to understand what's going on than you sitting here and not understanding what's going on.
It is a technical.
So I take my leave.
This panel is very technical, and have a great day, Spawn. I'll talk to you later.
Absolutely. Au revoir. Yeet.
And at the end of the day, this is a very technical panel. This is a very, like, a lot of information that goes over a lot of people's heads, including mine. Sometimes I'm looking and I'm like, I should know what that is. I should know what they're talking about. I just don't. But you take it with a grain of salt. You absorb what you can. We get what we can from it. And then we move on to the next one. And then maybe when we're going through the documents, we can refer back to this. And when we go through the documents, oh, that's what they were talking about when, you know, they were referring to this specific time, and we can relook at this day and this time frame to see what they were talking about. So it's always a good time.
For that panel.
And I realize you may not have flown this route. I apologize. Have you had a
And this woman is from Alabama currently. I don't know if she's ever been stationed in DC, but currently, as far as the docket is concerned, she is from Alabama, and she is in Alabama. So asking her about routes in DC, it's like asking me about LA traffic. It sucks. I don't know. It's busy. It's crazy, but I don't know.
chance to read all the document material that we released, Mrs. Lewis?
I've reviewed all of the document material for the air data systems and altimeters.
Did you find anything?
And the fact that they're not addressing her by her title is driving me more and more crazy every time that he calls her Mrs. Lewis. She's a fucking officer. And even though not some officers are better than others, like, she is still a member of the military, and you are addressing her as like a civilian. Stop.
Disturbing in what you read?
In my opinion, the amount of clearance between the helicopter route and potentially the altitude of an aircraft passing over top of it was concerning.
I hope so. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, I'm going to go back to the technical panel to see if they have other questions. And then my understanding is, because I'm getting texts from the team, that there are some party questions. So I want to make sure we are within schedule. So I want to make sure everybody's questions are answered. So we'll go back to technical team, then we'll come back to the parties.
And at the tables, there's
This question's for Mr. Rosengren.
at the tables, there are one table is from PSA Airlines, the airline that was operating the American Airlines flight. There is the Pilots Association, and there's more people from the FAA, I believe. And there's They introduced themselves. I just can't remember. Honestly, I don't know. I think he's just stupid. To be honest, based on that's the same person that I believe was talking about the fact that he has PTSD from this. And it's fine if you have PTSD. I don't knock anybody who has mental health issues. I would probably have mental health issues, but someone who wasn't directly involved, didn't know anybody who was involved personally, at a hearing talking about his feelings in front of family members who lost their loved ones, including some of their children, is not an appropriate time to be talking about your feelings. So I've got a really bad, like, he's rubbed me the wrong way, so to speak. Your feelings are not appropriate for an NTSB hearing on facts. I don't really care that a member of the NTSB, and I will say this to the end of time, if you have PTSD from this, maybe sitting here on a panel asking questions about it ain't for you. Just this would actually, looking back, is the correct way to address a warrant officer is Miss or Mrs. instead of rank, since warrants are weirder. See, and that's the thing. We always address them as chief warrant officer or sir, ma'am, like, but that's I guess that's Navy versus Army. We didn't address them as chief because we have those, and they're a special breed in themselves. Yeah, see, that's interesting because we just call them warrant officers, like warrant officer so and so. But I guess that's the difference between the Army and Navy.
Previously with the flight data recorder, you had mentioned that when the data is downloaded, it's looked for reasonableness. Is there a standard for reasonableness with the FDR data?
So just for clarification, we don't download the FDR data. We download the HUMS data, which is in the data card, but they come from the same remote data concentrator, so we're confident that they're similar, minus a few recording rate differences in hertz. So we download the HUMS data. I'm not aware of any standards. I can get back to you if I find out anything different. One thing does come to mind. So the 3 parts that I did mention, there are some vibration standards we look for to make sure that those 3 parts aren't exceeded. But outside of those three parts that we track, I don't know of any particular standards we use.
Okay, we'd appreciate if you could get us that information, and particularly if the pressure altitude data is looked for, and if there's a standard for what's considered reasonable for that parameter. Jumping a bit, my next question is for Mrs. Lewis. This is a scenario-based one, based on what the chairwoman asked about flying over the Potomac River route. If you had a route ceiling of about 200 feet and you were to look at your barometric altimeter and see about 160 feet, but then saw on your radar altimeter about 280 feet, how would you triage that situation in your experience?
In my experience, so if the barometric altimeter is reading 160 feet, you're saying, and the radar altimeter is reading significantly higher than that, I would still, my primary concern on the MSL route would be staying below the 200 feet. And I would definitely, take note of that and maybe write the aircraft up for some, maintenance action. But at that particular time, I would, as long as there was nothing wrong with the aircraft before we took off, as far as the field elevation of the barometric altimeter, I would, continue to assume that I was below that 200-foot MSL.
Thank you. And then my last follow-up question is, I think Mr. Braddom would be best suited, but Mr. Rosengren can chime in as well. Based on the discussions today for the answers that we've received today in panel 1, there have been limitations identified with the accuracy of barometric altimeters just as a technology. They're mechanical instruments compared to newer air data computers and more modern technology. So knowing that based on our testing and just based on experience that these older technologies have these limitations that can create larger altitude offsets between indicated altitude to where the helicopter is actually at. What sort of considerations would the Army have for when flying in the national airspace system where pressure altitude accuracy is crucial?
So I think there's a question about the size of expected altimeter error versus aircraft separation when you're talking about a route like this in the national airspace. And I think that's not, I'm certainly not an expert to talk on the route design and the amount of allowable separation, but clearly when you take into account, there's standards for pilots to maintain altitude. There's standards, for the altimeter error. And as I thinking about this, I don't think that we envision a situation where, well, prior to this incident, myself personally, in my experience, I wouldn't have envisioned a situation where you'd be operating on barometric altimeter, with less than a 500-foot separation. But I think if you're asking if we're kind of relooking how we operate in the national airspace, I don't, with the exception perhaps of the correction for the ESSS configuration, I don't believe there's any deviance from from what's accepted on the civil side as well. I mean, the military requirements, the 70-foot check is more stringent than the 75-foot check. The mil spec 25 feet of position error is more stringent than the civil 30 feet of position error. So with that one exception, I think we're still operating inside the requirements.
I have so many things to say about this, the less than 500 feet, like regardless of what altimeter you're using, I can't, and I will say it to my dying day, and I might be wrong as far as what other people think. And in this case, I really don't care. I've said it before. I will say it again. I will stand on the mountaintops. I will die on this hill. I don't think, even if they are training to get emergency personnel out of Washington, or they get, politicians out of Washington in an emergency. Let me rephrase that. I do not think that any training exercise done by any branch of the military should interfere with civilians. Obviously, a helicopter crashes, say, flying over a city, obviously you're going to have some civilian impacts, buildings, whatever. But specifically crossing the landing space of a civilian airport, to me, is a bridge too far. I will die on that hill. Figure it out. Find a different fucking way. Those civilians did not ask to be put in the middle of a military training exercise. Do it after all flights are done for the day. I don't know. Do it at 3 o'clock in the morning when there really are no flights. 10 o'clock at night is not the time to do it. It's busy airspace. Figure out a fucking way to not have civilians involved in a military operation, especially a training op. They didn't ask for this shit. You signing all them fucking papers for the military, you signing your name 10 million freaking times, you giving them your fingerprints, you giving them your damn DNA, you signed a blank check. You knew what you were doing, and that every exercise that you do puts yourself in harm's way. These kids did not. So whoever thought it was a fucking good idea needs a court martial or something, because y'all are dumb. I will die on that hill. Yeah, most commercial pilots had a military background, and when I worked at a civilian airline, yeah, it was true, most of our pilots did. However, the passengers don't. And it's not about the pilots in the civilian plane. It's about the 50, 60, hundreds of people that are on board that didn't sign up for any of that shit. They didn't sign up to be a pilot. If they wanted to be put in harm's way, they would have signed up themselves, or they would have been a pilot themselves. This is something that I will yeah. Like I will die on this hill. So, although I usually appreciate healthy debate, I will debate you. This is not something that anybody will ever change my mind. I will die on this hill. And Duncan, Idaho, thanks for the 5 gifted Squid Pro Quo memberships. I appreciate you so much. I wish someone would ask how often this particular training route was used. It bothers me. Well, the next panel is about the routes in DC and the helicopter routes. So we'll possibly get there. Remember, this is so much information. that it's broken down into different panels with different focuses. And just like I've told Spawn, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's not put the cart before the horse. Yeah. No civilian will jump on a plane with a green pilot. No, not this woman. Hey, Malin, how are you? It's good to see you. Let's get this started
Would
again.
there be any considerations to selecting certain models that have newer technologies or more accurate instrumentation versus older models and flying certain missions based on, again, known limitations with route ceilings or proximity to civil aircraft in the national airspace?
Yeah, I think that's an operational question, and I don't know that I could speak to that.
Is there someone here that can, as a witness?
I think it'd probably be best to wait for more operational, experienced witnesses to give more expert testimony.
Thank you.
Yes, just one follow-up question. Mr. Rosengren or Mr. Braddom, given your knowledge of the various electronic devices on the UH-60L model, are there systems that are currently installed that record the helicopter's position and either radar or geometric altitude over time that could be used for operational data monitoring for safety assurance purposes?
So we do include the radar altitude in our parameter data and the flight data recorder and the HUMS data, so that can be used. We don't record the GPS data.
Okay, and does that, where do those data go?
So that data goes to the same places, the flight data recorder and the health and usage monitoring system. I'll call it a card, PCMC card. So those are downloaded to the integrated vehicle health monitoring system.
Okay, but who receives those data?
So those are downloaded after mission day, as I mentioned before, by the operational units, and then they're uploaded to the cloud so that we can access it as an Army enterprise.
Okay, so at a higher level, the Army monitors those data?
The Army has access to it at a higher level, yes, as well as operationally.
Could those data be used to determine if battalion helicopters are exceeding the maximum altitudes on the DC helicopter routes?
Yeah, so the information that's recorded, so you have radar altimeter that's recorded, but you don't have terrain being recorded, which you would need. The recorded pressure altitude out of the system, it's very difficult to map the recorded pressure altitude to the pilot's barometric, what the pilot's actually physically seeing. So the recording in the HUMS system is not recording from the pilot's altimeter the way the transponder is. You're recording from a transducer that's on the same static line, but not connected to that instrument. So although they have some of the same errors, the instrument error that's in the pilot's instrument and the error that's in the transducer recorder path, those are different sets of errors.
Yeah,
and so in some cases, when those errors are close to each other, you get good agreement. And in some cases, when those errors are not close to each other, you get significant disagreement. But unless you have a reference measurement, you can't parse that out.
Yeah, I'm not asking about comparing the two types. What I'm asking is, does it contain, it sounds like it does record radar altitude. Does it record position?
It doesn't record latitude and longitude. Is that what you mean by
Yes.
position? No, but it does record the parameters needed to reconstruct the flight. However, you do need a known data point, as our NTSB friends did here. They knew the data point that we took off from on the flight, and so they were able to reconstruct the May 15th flight from that known data point. But it doesn't
Okay.
include absolute time or absolute position.
So it would require considerable analysis.
It would require considerable analysis and considerable note taking on at least a known reference point.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
No more from the technical panel, Chairwoman Hamady.
Thank you. We're going to go in the same order. Alpa.
Thank you, Chairman. The first question we have is for Mr.
Malin, this hearing was started last Wednesday in DC, talking about the January 29th collision in Washington, DC between the American Airlines helicopter or American Airlines CRJ and the Army Black Hawk helicopter. They're just getting into, this is still panel one. It was a 3-day hearing. The hearings went from, I think, 9 a.m. to like 7 p.m. Obviously, I don't have time to stream all day long, especially with interjecting my opinions and my attitudes towards some of these things. However, so we're going to be going over it over the next couple of weeks. So, and I wouldn't be terrified to fly. It's not, I have to look more at the data, but there doesn't seem to be any more incidents this time in the first 7 months or 6 months of 2025 than there was in the first 6 months of 2024 from the information that I am finding. However, There's been a couple, what I believe, and Spawn and I were going to talk about this until I found out that these hearings were this week, or this past week. This was supposed to be our topic for last Wednesday, was the data. It does appear that there has just been a couple of more serious ones, such as DCA, such as the one in India. Also, because of the current political climate that we live in, and one side of the aisle not having a, and this is not something I want to get political on, because this is not political. This is just supposed to be purely factual. But because one side of the aisle doesn't really have a platform of their own that I can find, except for Orange Man Bad, they are pointing out things and trying to blame every little thing that ever happens on Orange Man Bad, and it's his fault because even though a lot of the things that led up to problems that we are seeing now have been happening 5, 10, 15, 20 years in the making. A problem doesn't just appear overnight. It's a slow breakdown of this starts to happen. This doesn't get upgraded. So I believe there are things that are being reported more by the media than there was this time last year or the year before. And also, there seems to be more YouTube channels, myself included, covering things about aviation. So people who ordinarily wouldn't watch the news are still hearing about things that they wouldn't ordinarily hear about. So I think there's just more of it's out there versus something happened in Texas 2 weeks ago. Nobody cares because nobody actually got hurt. Nothing happened. Like a plane skidded off the runway. Nobody got hurt. It's fine. There was a turbulence problem. Obviously, really can't help turbulence. You can try to fly around it, above it. Really can't help it, but a bunch of people got injured on a Delta flight recently. Normally wouldn't hear about incidents like that. However, aviation is in everybody's hyper aware of every little thing that happens now. So every little tiny thing that happens is being reported. So I'm not trying to say that they're fear-mongering, because it's not exactly fear-mongering, but it's a hyper awareness that we didn't really have in the front of our consciousness last year, the year before that. Yeah, it's the TDS showing up. The media wants them to look terrible. Yeah. But they really aren't, not according to the data. That's the thing. It's not that they're not. That's not what the data says. Yeah. That's not what the data says. That's the weird part. So it's like, if the data doesn't say that there's a statistical difference, then it can only be the reporting.
Cooper, if barometric tolerances were tightened, would Sikorsky be able to support modification to these systems used in rotorcraft, even if it required retrofits or redesigns to the pilostatic systems?
For which model?
For any, but specifically in this case, it could be, the Leam or the micro going for whatever it might be.
Tighten to what limits?
If they were just tightened, say, we'll give you a number, say plus minus 50 feet or something for field elevation barometric altimeter checks.
For the Lima, again, because it's a compilation of errors, as has been stated, it would require changing out of the government furnished provided indicator. So with that indicator, there's some limitations as to where you can tighten tolerances. For the others, it is plausible we could analyze requirements and determine alterations to the probes. So plausible, but again, we would need exact requirements. It's kind of hard to provide an answer, for just a broad.
Of course, but so you're saying it would be possible, but it would have to be analyzed.
Yes, and the configuration, like I said, the external storage support system configuration has a larger error, and need to understand how that applies also.
Thank you. Next question for Chief Warrant Officer Lewis. In your opinion, should any considerations be given to using different helicopter model types and low altitude routes located in congested areas?
As I stated before, I've flown the different variations that the Army has the Black Hawk. I have not flown in the DC route structure. I have flown both the Mike and the Lima in low altitude, and based on my experience and not having flown here, I don't want to make a recommendation. I feel that's outside of my experience of which one's best to fly here.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Stop asking her questions that are outside her area of expertise. She's not here to talk about routes. She's here to talk about the altimeter data. That's it. She's here to answer questions about altimeters. You ask her about the routes. I understand you're trying to connect it to the altimeter data and the mental gymnastics that fucking DC people try to do. But I'm sorry, the mental gymnastics that anybody, and I'm sorry, Flash fan, because he lives in DC, but people who work in DC, as far as anybody who works for the government, has to do some freaking mental gymnastics to even do their job on a daily basis. These people are supposed to be subject matter experts in aeronautical engineering, but they are asking her questions that are outside her area of expertise. And then they seem to catch an attitude when she can't answer it. It's like she's here to talk about altimeter data. From a pilot's perspective, she's here to talk about altimeter data. She's not here to talk about the routes in DC. That's fair. She can't talk about something she's never done before. Hey, JKD Buck. Yeah, some of these questions are ridiculous. And that's one of the other reasons that we're watching this, is because you'll see, yes, these things are 3 days and they take a long time, but you'll see how many questions are important and how many questions are outside of their area of expertise, but then they turn around and get pissed or annoyed. They don't get pissed. They might, but they don't show it. Annoyed when they don't get the answer that they're looking for. It is almost like the government, when you hear, well, we asked her this question and she didn't give us an answer. Yeah, that's because she didn't know. She's not avoiding your question, but they spin it so I'm interested to see what the final report looks like. And if the final report brings up the fact that some of these questions on this panel were not answered, even though they were outside of their area of expertise, and they did not feel comfortable answering them based on them being outside of their scope of practice. But you can see how much of a waste of time some of these questions actually are. And the fact that people are thinking that these questions are important makes you wonder where people's priorities lie. So, and it's just a weird conundrum. Yeah, more people are talking about everything because of mainstream media don't know how to put out news. News statistics show 75% look for news on YouTube nowadays, fact checking, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm always the type of person where I want to get ground news as a sponsor, because I love ground news. Because ground news will literally look at headlines and tell you left leaning, right leaning, center, and you can actually look at the ground news will give you dude, I would love to have them as a sponsor because I love them. How to pick out information. It's just crazy. It's just crazy the way so when we look at articles here, we look at more than one on the same topic to pick out. And if more than one article shares that information, it's probably accurate. But if one person starts to give you their opinion, it's like, okay, let's keep opinion out of it and just try to stick to facts. So.
That's all from Alpha.
Thank you, FAA.
I don't have any questions, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much, NACA.
Chairwoman, we have no further questions. Our questions have been answered, and I'd like to thank the panelists today. Thank you.
Thank you, PSA.
Thank you. A couple operational questions real quick here. In your experience with those flying along, your co-pilot or instructor pilot voices a different altitude than you have of 100 feet. Is that any area of concern for you?
I would, if an instructor pilot, are you asking if they told me to adjust my altitude by 100 feet, would I do so?
If you call 300 feet and he calls you, I got you at 400 feet, would that be an area of concern for you?
100 foot of difference would not be a large area of concern. The first thing I would do would be to make sure we both had the same altimeter setting, and then address the situation going forward from there.
How much would it take to be a concern?
A couple 100 feet would be a concern in flight.
Okay. And I guess going back to the low levels, if you're on a 200-foot MSL route, would 100 feet be a concern then?
100 feet in what regard? 100 foot difference between the pilot and the co-pilot altimeters?
Yes.
100 feet would still be, we would still have that 100 foot window, plus or minus 100 feet to maintain altitude.
Okay.
My only problem with what she said there, that still goes back to you're working in an area where you know you're probably going to be less than 500 feet around it in 500 feet from another aircraft. So 100 feet of altitude, she said you'd still have that plus or minus 100 feet window and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But when you're working in less than 100 feet or less than 500 feet of altitude or distance from another aircraft, to me, that 100 feet would be, I'd be freaking out. But that's part of probably why I'm not a pilot, and she is. But that's where that 100 or that less than 500 feet from another aircraft fucking gets me, and I will die on that hill.
Sorry, my next question. An example you're given by the tech panel. You said if the barrel altimeter was 160, radar altimeter displayed significantly higher, over 200 feet, you would continue to rely on the barrel altimeter to conclude you were below 200 feet. Can you explain why you would fall back or use the barrel altimeter as primary?
In my experience, if the barometric altimeter checks out good on the ground before I take off, and as we stated before, I mean, pilots generally, they're not out flying doing math between the barometric altimeter and radar altimeter, adding up altitude differences and considering that during flight. So as long as it was good on the ground before I took off, I would continue to assume that my barometric altimeter was accurate.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sikorsky.
One quick follow-up question. Mr. Cooper, just to clarify, you said that the pitot probe location on the Blackhawk was determined primarily by Army operational and performance requirements for the Blackhawk. Is that correct?
No, I said that those feed into the consideration of its location, right?
Here we go
available
again.
real estate on the aircraft, the required operational envelope of the aircraft, and what other equipment and considerations would normally feed into that selection. You know, I honestly have to say in the late 1970s, I don't know why they picked the exact location other than various other military products of that time, including those delivered to the Army from Sikorsky, had their probes in an above cabin location.
So I think you're also saying that other military aircraft at that time had probes in that location as well.
Correct. The CH-53, the H-3, and the S-54 crane, X-64 crane had those upper locations also.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Mr. Cooper.
U.S. Army.
Just one follow-up question, Madam Chairman. For Mr. Gant, we talked a lot about altimeter errors and the deviations that are within the acceptable ranges. Are these unique to the UH-60 Lima, or is this consistent in commercial and general aviation across the national airspace?
It's across all fleet types. The physics doesn't change. Although between the FAA and the military, we might have slightly different requirements. Maybe just by way of background, for transport category airplanes, the position air requirement is the same, plus or minus 30 feet per thousand, or per 100 knots, excuse me. And that's been in place since 1958.
No further questions.
Thank you. Can you pull up that chart again, Brian? Okay, so I will ask this question, Mr. Cooper. The model of helicopter that was involved in the collision, understanding that there are different requirements when you're ordering, is this model generally sold to other branches of the military?
No.
There's UH-60 derivatives to the other branches of the military, yes.
How about outside the military?
They're international customers.
They're international. Okay, thank you very much.
I was wrong. There are, but they're not the same configuration. So they're not the same configuration. They're not the same operational requirements. So they asked him that question. He gave them an answer. I don't think that, obviously I don't work for Sikorsky, but I would think that I would have said yes, but there's different operational requirements. Just a thought process there. Maybe I'm wrong.
And is there a difference on where the pitot probes are for the mic?
No, there's not.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask I don't know if it's for Mr. Braddom or for Mr. Rosengren. I just wanted to go back to what you're working on for the flight manual and the safety alert. Did I hear you right that you are focused on the Lima with the ESSS and the outboard fuel tanks?
So, ma'am, it applies to the mic as well. So it applies to the
With the outboard fuel tanks?
yes, ma'am. With the ESSS wings and one tank on each side is the configuration that has been tested historically, and that's where we have good data on that particular configuration.
And that's what you're focused on for the policy change?
Yes, ma'am. For the
Or
ESSS
for the
configuration.
alert? Yeah,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
any sort of change to the flight manual.
Yes, ma'am.
The reason why I'm asking is if I'm looking back at the formation flight, for the 12th Battalion, I mentioned the numbers, the difference between the barometric altimeter was 1,070 feet and the radio altimeter was 1,200 feet, off by 130 feet. That was for the ESSS. The lead helicopter and the third, I believe, were the clean ones, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so they don't have the outboard fuel tanks.
Correct.
My question is, the barometric altimeter on the lead helicopter showed 1,090 feet, radio altimeter 1,180 feet with a difference of 90 feet. On the third helicopter, it was 1,100 feet and 1,180 feet with 80 feet of difference. Does that concern you at all?
So, ma'am, so first you can explain those discrepancies, and if I could just talk through it just very, very quickly. So that delta that you see in those aircraft, if you take their how far those aircraft were from field elevation on the ground, and you assume that's a good approximation of its instrument error, and then you add the position error to that, and then you add the temperature effect, because on that day they were flying they were flying a warmer than standard temperature, which has, when you're trying to compare radar and barometric altitude, you have to correct for the temperature. So there's 36 feet of that roughly is a temperature effect. But so for those aircraft, if you take those standards, and I apologize, I'm flipping through my notes to get the exact numbers on the aircraft, but I have them for all the aircraft on that test. So for example, ma'am, so for aircraft number one, it was 45 feet low on the ground.
Mhm.
The position error adds 7 feet low, and then the temperature adds 36 feet low, which is 88 feet,
Yep.
which is close. So what you have is a case where you have 3 different effects all in the same direction.
Correct.
And then for aircraft, for the second aircraft, the one that was ESSS.
Those are the ones I went through before. A lot of those I went through before.
Yes, ma'am.
And then there are differences, obviously, from this chart in the allowable errors in the instruments, or in different components, correct?
I'm sorry, ma'am, say that again?
The chart, some of those stack up too.
Yes, ma'am. So some of those do. So the static system, the first 2 you see there are position error.
Yep.
One is military, one is civil. And then in the barometric, so for example, the scale error is the aneroid capsule error.
Okay, I don't need to go through all these.
Yes, ma'am.
We've already gone through all of these.
you.
The question I'm asking is you have a difference of 80, difference of 90. I understand there's temperature fluctuations. I understand there is allowable instrument error. What I'm getting at is, would you be concerned if this mid-air collision didn't happen and you knew, you had 75 feet of separation between the glide slope and the east bank of the Potomac?
Yes, ma'am. I'd say prior to this incident, that would not, I don't believe, have concerned me significantly. Understanding the vertical separation that existed in this case, yes, that would concern me.
Can I ask one more question? Was there does anyone, and I'm going to ask everyone to answer this question, were there any efforts by the Department of Defense or Army to get helicopter Route 4 back in place after the Secretary did the work, thank you, of taking it off the map?
I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't know. That's not a
Does anyone
an
else
area of my
know?
expertise.
Once again, you're asking a question that is for the wrong panel. Wait for panel 2. Wait, you have a panel specifically set up for panel 2. Overview of the DCA Class B airspace and helicopter routes, witnesses 6 through 14. You have operations manager of DCA, director of policy, FAA, acting deputy chief operating officer of FAA. You have a bunch of people from FAA. You have former standardization instructor pilot, Army Aviation Brigade, Colonel Andy DeForest, Army Aviation Brigade, Aviation Site Manager, MedStar Transport, Product Manager, Assured Airspace, Access Systems, U.S. Army, Aviation Human Factors Researcher and Author, retired NASA and Ames employee. You have all these people who are experts or have your answers. You're asking the wrong freaking people. Wow, I don't. This is where they're putting the cart before the horse. They set up all this shit. They set up all these witnesses. They organized all this crap, and they are getting ahead of themselves. Stop asking people who don't have the knowledge on the routes about the fucking routes. Stop.
I don't know either, ma'am.
I don't know, ma'am.
FAA, Sikorsky. Okay, thank you. Member Graham? Member Emmett? Does the technical panel have anything? We've got time.
Let's move on.
No, ma'am, we're good.
Hey, Stats.
Okay, then we're going to go ahead and break for lunch. We will be back at 2:15. And just a reminder for the staff, lunch is served upstairs for all you all involved.
And we are, of course, we are skipping. I'm taking the time to get a drink of water. It like, stop asking people the wrong questions. And then
We're encouraged to fly above 100 feet for noise.
Into security, so we're going to give it a little bit more time so people can get through.
And this right here is the person in charge, or the chairwoman. She she just looks like a big old Karen. Hey, Scrody. 31 likes. Thank you. Hey, Heroes, Chris, listening while painting. Greetings from Belgium. How is everybody doing today? And share these streams out, because these are some of my favorite ones to do, because I feel like they are important. And I know these are kind of monotonous, but that's why we try to make it entertaining. And I'm skipping a couple seconds at a time. All the alter egos are coming out.
Banning is going to provide a summary of the accident just to get us back in, since we've been out for an hour, back into as we go into panel 2. Mr. Banning.
Trigger warning.
As you saw in the animation, about 2 minutes before the collision, DCA Tower contacted Pat 25 to inform the crew of Flight 5342's location. At this time, the aircraft were about 7.5 miles apart. Flight 5342 was just south of the Wilson Bridge, and Pat 25 was over the tidal basin. Pat 25 stated that they had traffic in sight and requested visual separation, which the tower approved. 15 seconds before the collision, DCA Tower contacted Pat 25 a second time and asked if they had the CRJ in sight. At this time, the aircraft were about 1.25 miles apart. Based on information obtained from the CVR, the crew of Pat 25 did not hear the controller's instructions to pass behind the CRJ. Pat 25 again stated that they had the aircraft in sight and requested visual separation. The controller approved. The collision occurred about 8:47 and 59 seconds p.m. Eastern Standard Time. At the time of the accident, one controller at DCA Tower was managing both airplane and helicopter traffic. During the final 2 minutes of the accident flight, the controller spoke to 6 different aircraft, including Pat 25. As mentioned in the animation, all aircraft could hear
6 aircraft in 2 minutes. 1 person. 6 aircraft, 2 minutes, 1 person. And remember, this is January 29th, so anybody who tries to blame funding or DEI stuff on President Trump can just blow it out their rear end, because this is January 29th. DC has been having problems with air traffic control since a long time before then. There is a current lawsuit that started in 2015 where a group of people who were passed over for air traffic controller jobs, when they changed the way they hire, going from the college recruitment program to off the street people, to get more people of color. Not my words, the lawsuit's words, because there were, according to the panel, were too many straight white men. Not my words, the lawsuit's words. That lawsuit started against the Department of Transportation in 2015. It is still ongoing to this day. It has stayed right now. They are in mediation. I just looked it up yesterday to make sure they are in mediation and working on a settlement. However, the people that are trying to blame this on Trump based on air traffic control and funding, that one you can, yeah. Yes, I'll put a link to the docket that has the entire, I pinned it to the top of the chat. So the pinned comment to the top of the chat is the docket that all the NTSB or this hearing is going off of. It's all public. We will be going over it sometime in the next week to 2 weeks to months. It is a lot. It is a lot. Right now we're going through the hearing, and I am going through it little by little, day by day. Spawn will be joining me for some days, others not, based on his schedule. But probably every other day, I'm going to be doing this, at least on Wednesdays. And probably tomorrow is when I'll do the next part, but we are going to get into this. We probably have another hour on this. We'll get into as much as we can on panel 2 today. We might finish day 1 because we are 5 hours and 23 minutes into day 1. We are going to speed it up just a little bit, and I will try to do, I think I'll do less talking now because the routes around DC, this is going to be interesting.
The controller, but helicopters could only hear other helicopters on their frequency, and airplanes only other airplanes. Air traffic control procedures will be discussed as part of panel 3. At the time of the collision, PAT 25 was in a near level attitude at an altitude of 278 feet and a ground speed of 90 knots. Flight 5342 was lined up with runway 33 and descending at a ground speed of 110 knots. At the time of the collision, the airplane was in a slight left roll and the elevators were deflected to near their maximum nose-up travel. The helicopter's air data systems and altimeters were discussed in panel 1. DCA Class B airspace contains a high volume of helicopter activity that includes local and state law enforcement, all branches of the military, Homeland Security, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the National Park Service, and medical transport. The volume and complexity of mixed operations required letters of agreement that outline specific procedures. Helicopter Route 4's ceiling was 200 feet. However, helicopter operators were encouraged to fly above 100 feet for noise reduction. Route 4 ran along the eastern shore of the Potomac River, but did not have defined horizontal edges. The runway 33 approach path was located over the Potomac River for a distance of about 4,100 feet. Runway 33 has a 4-light precision approach path indicator, or PAPI, that provides a 3-degree glide slope to the runway. At an altitude of 200 feet over the river's eastern shore, a helicopter would have about a 75 foot of vertical separation from an airplane on approach to runway 33. Panel 2 will discuss the airspace surrounding DCA and the helicopter routes. Flight 5342 was equipped with Traffic Alert and Collision Avoidance System, or TCAS. The flight crew of PAT 25 was equipped with iPads with the ForeFlight application installed, which had the capability of displaying aircraft that were radiating Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast, or ADSB, out. ADSB is a method of aircraft surveillance that can be used by air traffic control and other ADSB-in equipped aircraft. PAT 25 was not transmitting ADSB data at the time of the collision. However, both aircraft were equipped with transponders and tracked by radar. Collision avoidance technologies will be discussed in panel 4. Multiple data sources were used to create the following images that depict the aircraft flight tracks from various views. None of the images depict the nighttime conditions that existed at the time of the accident. This image depicts the flight track of both aircraft. The yellow line is a helicopter track, and the green is the airplane track. The yellow circle is the location of the collision. This view looks south along the helicopter's flight track. This image is looking northwest along the airplane's flight path as it approached runway 33. The yellow line is a helicopter's track, and the green is the airplane's track. The yellow circle is the location of the collision. This image looks southeast from the DCA air traffic control tower. The control tower is located in the bottom middle of the image, highlighted by the red circle.
And I know that these pictures are kind of hard to see because the screen is cut off, but we're using the pool feed from the NTSB that was put on the Hills site, the Hills YouTube channel. It is what it is. They do have all of these slides in the docket. I'm not sure what number it is though.
As a result of the accident, the NTSB issued 2 urgent safety recommendations to the FAA to prohibit helicopter operations on Route 4 when runways 15 and 33 were in use, and to designate an alternative to helicopter Route 4. Immediately following the accident, the FAA implemented temporary airspace restrictions around DCA. Shortly thereafter, the FAA removed the section of helicopter Route 4 between Haynes Point and the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. Additionally, the FAA prohibited the use of runways 1533 and 422 at DCA during specific helicopter operations in the vicinity of DCA. The United States Army directed the accomplishment of operational checks of aircraft transponders to include ADSB out functionality. Panel 5 will discuss safety management systems, including mid-air collision risk in the National Airspace System. NTSB was notified of the accident on the night it occurred, and a GO team launched the next morning. The staff listed on this slide assisted in the initial response and/or are supporting the ongoing investigation. Member Inman acted as the agency spokesperson on scene. Parties to the investigation are Aerosonic, the Airline Pilots Association, the Association of Flight Attendants, BAE Systems, Collins Aerospace, the Federal Aviation Administration, GE Aerospace, International Association of Machinists and Airspace Workers, Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, National Air Traffic Controllers Association, PSA Airlines, Sikorsky, and the United States Army. In accordance with the provisions of Annex 13 to the Convention on International Civil Aviation, the Transportation Safety Board of Canada participated in the investigation as the representative of the state of design and manufacture of the airplane. The accredited representative was assisted by technical advisors from Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and Transport Canada. Chairwoman Hamady, this concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Banning. And now we'll go to Dr. Bauer to please provide an overview of the panel topics and introduce the technical panel and witnesses.
Thank you, Chairwoman Hamady. The second panel will provide an overview of the DCA Class B airspace and helicopter routes. The panel will address understanding the airspace surrounding DCA Airport, both the ATC perspective and the operator perspective.
And how
FAA standards governing design of Class B airspace separation standards. History of the helicopter routes to include the request, development, and approval process of the Baltimore-Washington helicopter routes with special focus on Route 4. Description of the Army's mission and tasking in the National Capital Region and their use of helicopter routes. Complexities of fleet mix and history of safety issues involving helicopters, both the ATC perspective and the operator perspective. History and activities of the DCA Helicopter Working Group and ADSB out. The NTSB technical panel, starting on my right, is composed of Mr. Brian Soper, Lead Aviation Accident Investigator for Air Traffic Control, Ms. Sarah Lewis, Aviation Accident Investigator for Air Traffic Control, Dr. Catherine Wilson, Senior Human Performance Investigator, and Captain Van McKinney, Aerospace Engineer, Helicopters. Witnesses for this panel are composed of the following individuals. From my left, nearest the board members. In the front row, Mr. Nick Fuller, Acting Deputy Chief Operating Officer, ATO, with the Federal Aviation Administration. Ms. Katie Murphy, the Manager of Visual Charting with the Federal Aviation Administration. Mr. John Stowe, the Acting Director for Policy and the Mission Support Services of the ATO with the Federal Aviation Administration. Colonel Andy DeForest, Commander of the Army Aviation Brigade with the U.S. Army. Mr. Clark Allen, Operations Manager of the DCA Airport Traffic Control Tower at the time of the accident with the Federal Aviation Administration.
Okay, I'm being picky and nitpicky, but first impressions, she looks like she don't want to be here. And dude, where is your suit jacket? Everybody else here is wearing a damn jacket. Where is your coat? Where's your coat? Like, she's got RBF from all hell, Katie Murphy. But like, Clark Allen, where is your damn coat? I know that's me being first impressions, but I did first impressions on the last panel and we compared them to how, you know, when people started talking, what the actual impressions, but psychology, it's what the brain does. Like, it's what the brain does. It's what I do. And we're at 1.5 speed right now. Could you imagine, or 1.4, could you imagine if we were listening to this at regular speed, how slow this dude is talking? My oldest granddaughter is starting school in 16 days at New Mexico State, an aerospace engineering major with a minor in mechanical engineering. Mr. Squid's degree is aeronautical engineering. I am halfway to an aeronautical engineering degree from Embry-Riddle. I've never stepped foot in a classroom for aeronautical engineering. I mean, a civilian classroom, but I'm halfway there. I have no desire to go back, but I do have a desire to go back to school. It's just I'd like to go back for like paralegal or something. I don't want to go back for yeah, maybe he's too hot with it on. I get that. However, it's like sometimes you want to bet that one, they keep this room super cold because everybody's wearing, you know, sport coats and suit jackets and uniforms. How much you want to bet every member of the military is so fucking uncomfortable right now? It ain't even funny. And the good luck to her. Good luck to her. Jacketed cleaners.
And Dr. Steve Kasner, an aviation human factors researcher and author and retired NASA Ames employee. In the second row, we have Mr. Rick Dressler. He's an aviation site manager with MedStar Transport of Metro Aviation Incorporated. Lieutenant Colonel Paul Flanagan, the product manager of Assured Airspace Access Systems with the U.S. Army. And Command Chief Warrant Officer David Van Vechten, who is a former standardization instructor pilot with the Army Aviation Brigade of the U.S. Army. Chairwoman Hamady, these witnesses have been pre-qualified and their respective experience and qualifications appear in the docket as exhibits. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bauer. I'll now ask the witnesses to please stand. Please raise your right hand. In this hearing, will remain under oath until the conclusion of the hearing. We ask that you answer the questions factually and avoid any type of analysis or speculation. Finally, please push the microphone button to talk and push it again when you're finished. I'm now going to turn questioning over to Mr. Soper.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Mr. Allen, could you please provide us with an overview of the DCA Class B airspace, and please include some of the most prominent complexities, challenges, and constraints from an air traffic control perspective?
Good afternoon. The DCA Class Bravo airspace extends out approximately 7 miles. It adjoins to Dulles Airport's airspace as well as Andrews Airspace. We receive helicopter traffic from Andrews, Baltimore, Dulles, Davison Army Airfield, and the local law enforcement and medevac hospitals. Some of the challenges associated with the airspace is the lack of airspace that we have, so to speak. There are multiple prohibited areas that we are unable to fly in. We have very specific procedures for fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters.
Thank you. And for Mr. Dressler and Mr. Van Vechten, I'd like you to respond to the latter part of that question as well, which was if you could share with us your most prominent complexities, challenges, or constraints for Mr. Dressler first from a non-military operator's perspective in the DCA airspace.
Thank you. For my perspective as a medevac operator, we're actually very privileged because in terms of priority, when we use the term medevac, we move everyone out of our way, including Marine HMX. For some of our other members, however, for the ad hoc DC helicopter operators group, that is not the case. So from a law enforcement perspective, we have several operators, whether that's U.S. Park Police, Maryland State Police, Fairfax County Police.
Okay, I just have to interrupt this. Roy, you don't know uncomfortable until you train in the summer desert wearing Mop 4 gear. You don't know hot until you've been in the Persian Gulf in July, in long sleeves with F-18 jet wash. I'm just saying, and a float coat and tool pouch and all that shit for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours a day. That is hot. Roy, I would say, and living in Florida in the summer. So think about being with desert temperatures, but ocean humidity. Welcome to the Navy.
Prince George's County Police Aviation, and all of them operate in an unscripted way, in a sense, because they don't fly from point A to point B necessarily. So their challenges are even greater than mine because I have an intended destination for every time my ships or one of my fellow medevac operators goes in. Our complexity is really, as Mr. Allen said, the airspace is very small, has very little room to maneuver, and we have prohibited areas that we have to avoid as well. Add in the final challenge is just the high volume of helicopter traffic in a very confined space.
Thank you. And Mr. Van Vechten, same question for you from the military or Army operator's perspective operating in the DC airspace.
Yes, we have the same challenges as Mr. Dresser addressed, the prohibited areas, and we're on specific routes that we are cleared through by ATC, or if we're in a zone, we're in a specific zone. So we must stick to these routes and zones as directed and cleared by ATC. There is a large volume of rotary wing traffic at low level, which is always a concern, and then the volume of fixed wing traffic in and out of Reagan Airport.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, back to you. When the helicopter control and local control positions are combined at DCA Airport Traffic Control Tower, do helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft share the same frequency, or do they remain on separate frequencies like when they are decombined?
They remain on separate frequencies.
And is that policy, or is that is there a reason for that?
They're charted the helicopter frequency specifically, so the helicopter users are going to naturally contact the facility on that frequency.
Okay. So from an air traffic controller's perspective, are there advantages or disadvantages to having the helicopters and the fixed wing aircraft on separate frequencies when it's combined?
Combined, it'd be subjective to each individual, but in my opinion, a positive would be it can help you prioritize your sequence of events or what you need to accomplish a little bit easier, having them separated.
Okay. Any disadvantages from an air traffic perspective?
Disadvantages, aircraft may step on each other utilizing two separate frequencies. You may miss an initial call or something of that nature.
Okay, thank you. And for Mr. Van Vechten and Mr. Dressler, once again, how about for yourself, for the Army operator's perspective, is there advantages or disadvantages to being on a separate frequency from the fixed wing operators while you're operating there?
Yes, sir, both. First, the advantages. I don't have to continuously hear all the fixed wing traffic, which would tie up communication between the pilots in the cockpit. The disadvantage was it leads to somewhat of a lack of situational awareness because I'm only hearing half of the conversation. So for example, when I hear tower transmit and they say Brickyard 1234, clear to land runway 19, I have to anticipate and wait for that fixed wing traffic to say, Roger, clear to land runway 19, or else I could end up stepping on him. So as you initially enter the airspace, you have to pause for a few seconds to see if there's anybody talking that you may not hear on a separate frequency.
Thank you. Mr. Dressler, for you.
So we are split among our community. All of the civilian aircraft carry two sets of VHF radios. And in that case, you could be listening to two frequencies at the same time. So many of our members dial up the regular tower frequency on one and monitor it. And on the other, we'll be up on the helicopter frequency. That depends on the pilot choice. The disadvantage to that is we also have a helicopter air-to-air frequency that we can communicate and deconflict amongst ourselves. And if you take that one out of play, you have no way to talk to anyone else. I prefer the simulcast same frequency model because I do like to hear all of the commercial traffic at the same time, so I can formulate my plan around that as well. I think the disadvantage is clear. It's a very, very, very busy airspace. And for all of us to be waiting in order to make a radio call without stepping on someone else is the massive disadvantage that I don't think there's a solution other than a split terminal.
Excellent. So I'm glad both of you mentioned stepping on. And just for context, when we say stepping on, that's, I'm assuming
Yeah,
you can.
and that was the problem. They did step on each other. Yeah, the Helo stepped on the Pat 25 stepped on the CRJ, and I'm at a loss right now for exactly when. I can't remember the exact moment and what that caused them to miss, but DC just it's probably the most congested airspace in the city or in the country, because you'd think Reagan has New York has 2 different airports, so separate it out a little bit. Atlanta, yeah, busiest airport in the world, but Atlanta only has the airport. You had Hartsfield Jackson International, but you don't have all the military stuff. So yeah, you have some Helo routes because you have medevac stuff and you have hospitals, but you don't have the restricted airspace because of Pentagon, White House, Capitol Hill, all of that, all of that shit that you have restricted airspace for here. So now are you not only dealing with all these people, you're dealing with all these people in a condensed area, and it's just like there's, and this is the thing, do I think that this should have probably been handled years ago when this area started getting more congested? Definitely. But maybe now something can actually be fixed. What the answer is, I don't know. Maybe we'll figure out something with all these people who have said, like, yeah, from my perspective, it sucks. From my perspective, it sucks. Maybe we can talk and come up with a solution that is not perfect, but might be better. We shall see, though.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when 2 people are transmitting at the same time simultaneously, and one essentially steps on the other, and one person or both people's transmission might be partially or wholly blocked out, correct?
That's exactly correct.
Okay. So along those lines, is there any way, and this one is for Clark, I'm sorry, Clark, is there any way for an air traffic controller to know if they were simultaneously broadcasting or had stepped on, or somebody had stepped on a frequency where an aircraft might not be receiving their full transmission? Are you aware of anything? Is there a side tone? Is there something that occurs that lets a controller know that, or is it just potentially lost transmission?
If the controller was given an instruction that would have required a readback and they did not receive the readback, they could assume that it was stepped on or the aircraft didn't hear it. But if it did not require readback, no, there would be no way for them to know.
Okay. And in your experience at DCA, is there a notable difference in the quality of radio transmissions from military versus non-military helicopter operators?
Yes.
Okay, and could you kind of elaborate on that for us? Give us an example.
Yes, among the medevac and law enforcement community, they operate newer aircraft with newer equipment. Like Rick had said earlier, they have dual radios where other operators are using other aircraft that are perhaps more dated and maybe only have a single radio versus dual radios that can impact communication.
Okay, so from along this same vein here, are there any particular operators that operate regularly within the DCA Class B airspace, or even type of helicopters that stand out to you as exceptionally challenging when it comes to communication quality?
We've had trouble in the past with the Air Force and Army.
Okay, and
shocker.
Does the helicopter control position at DCA have a UHF frequency available for use if requested by military pilots?
Yes, there is one.
Okay, have you ever known or have you ever experienced a military pilot to request a UHF frequency since you've been there? Or?
It's maybe occurred less than a handful of times.
Okay, and Mr. Van Bechten, for you, along this same thread here, are you aware of any feedback or have you had flight crews report similar concerns that they've received about the reception quality from their aircraft while flying here or anywhere around the area?
No, sir, I've not.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to shift modes just a little bit here to helicopter route history and the development of those, and with this little bit of a focus on Route 4 as well. So, Mr. Stowe, could you provide?
With this comment that I just left, with the grand scheme of things, when it comes to airspace and cities and airports, I've completely took medevacs and and law enforcement out of the equation. I completely forgot about what would happen if someone needs to flight for life, or go a helicopter from a smaller hospital to a larger hospital to get proper treatment. A lot of times the hospital here, people are flown to Savannah because it's got more stuff. Or Augusta because it's better treatment. In a rural hospital, you get what you get, nothing against the doctor, it's just limited resources. However, what about brings up another question. What about news helicopters, like traffic, things like that? Where do they fit into this equation as well? Just another piece to the 1,000-piece puzzle that got blown out of the sky.
That's just a brief explanation of what helicopter routes and helicopter zones are, if you can. If this is out of your area, please let me know. What is their primary purpose, and how do they fit into the airspace structure within the DCA Class B airspace specifically?
Absolutely. I would specifically reference Air Traffic Order 7210.3 when describing the helicopter route chart program. Chapter 12-4-1, helicopter route charts are graphic portrayals of discrete and/or common use helicopter routes and/or operating zones located in high-density traffic areas. Their purpose is to facilitate helicopter pilot access into and egress from or operation within charted areas. And that's a direct quote, but generally speaking, these charts facilitate reduced or easier controller pilot communications. There's a level of understanding when a helicopter pilot were to check in with a controller reporting a route, what the expectation is, where they would be flying, where they would be ingressing and egressing. Overall, it helps with efficiency and streamlining traffic flows as well.
Okay, so along those lines, this is for Ms. Murphy or Mr. Stowe. We heard earlier in Mr. Banning's presentation that the helicopter routes had no defined lateral boundaries. Could either of you explain why that is?
I can take a shot at it. So the helicopter routes are non-regulatory. They are merely recommended paths. It is expected that all pilots remain in contact with air traffic control while flying. As for the lateral boundaries, what is currently charted is nothing more than a symbol used to showcase the routes pictorially so that they look good, if you will, cartographically.
Okay, so how would, looking at those lines on a helicopter route chart, how do I know if I'm in compliance with that route from a lateral standpoint, if it has no lateral boundaries and it's just generally the area?
You don't.
So I guess to build on her response, and I think to lead into the question, the charts are recommended for the purpose of streamlining pilot controller communication and expectations, so the controller doesn't have to continuously assign a route. Knowing it would be incumbent on the controller to ensure that they're monitoring the route of flight and address any conflicts and maintain or ensure a proper separation.
Okay. Mr. Stowe, continue with you. Would your office have been consulted in a request for establishment of helicopter routes that transition the DCA airspace?
So the local air traffic manager is responsible for initiating updates, changes, or initiating new helicopter route chart establishment. They would generally work with the Mission Support Services service centers, who would support establishing a local work group or task force, as it's referred to in the 7210.3, which would be comprised of local operators. And then a lot of local coordination work would be done, and then that would ultimately be passed off to the charting office to actually publish the charts.
Great. Mr. Fuller can thank you later because you just answered his question. Mr. Allen, are you aware of DCA Air Traffic Control Tower management and or the bargaining unit if they had any input or involvement in the development of the route structure at DCA Airport Traffic Control Tower? And I think it's been in place for quite some time, so you may not have been working there when it was, but do you have any awareness if the facility did have input on that?
Whenever we made helicopter route and zone changes in 2023, I believe it was facility driven between the bargaining unit and management.
Okay. Mr. Fuller, is there a requirement for the Baltimore-Washington helicopter route chart to be reviewed at any specific periodicity by any entity?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Ms. Murphy or Mr. Stowe, are you aware of any periodicity requirement that he might not be aware of for review of those charts?
I would refer, since I have it in front of me, to the 72.3, again, same paragraph, that would require annual review as a responsibility from the air traffic manager for reviewing helicopter route charts.
Okay, so what would be the expectation of that review? Would that be documented in some form other than we conducted a review and everything remained the same, or would they fill out a report or some sort of correspondence through their hierarchy chain of command?
I don't know I'm not aware of a specific requirement. I would generally only be speculating or assuming that they would document it in some manner.
So, Ms. Murphy, would your office receive confirmation, let's say that facilities have conducted their annual review of their charts, their applicable charts, and then you would monitor it, or not monitor it, but you would see that or not?
No, Aeronautical Information Services only receives communication if and whenever change to the chart is requested.
Okay. Mr. Allen, were you ever involved in conducting any of these reviews, assisting the air traffic manager potentially of the Baltimore helicopter route chart?
When I was a member of the helicopter work group, we did routinely review it, and that's how we came up with the changes that were implemented in 2023.
Okay. So I have to ask, I think I had it for later, but we're right at a point where it's probably a good point to ask this. Helicopter Route 4, the helicopter route in question in this event, do you recall either as part of the helicopter working group, as part of annual reviews conducted, or part of local safety council, anything that identified Route 4 as being problematic or conflicting with regard to your traffic flow at DCA Airport Traffic Control Tower?
Yes, we had those discussions.
Can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
When we met with the larger user groups of the airspace and discussed different improvements, ways we can make the system safer, more efficient, it was brought up with several different options, either to eliminate a portion of Route 4, move Route 4 over to 295 in Maryland. And both of those options, we were told we were unable to do due to continuity of government operations or security.
Okay, thank you. So for Miss Murphy, do you have a history of the development of the route of the helicopter route structure there, like when they were established, these routes that transit the Class Bravo airspace at DCA?
Well, without records in front of me, I can detail a little bit. Route 4 appeared in totality on the first edition of the Baltimore-Washington helicopter route chart effective February 13th, 1986. It was largely unchanged until 1991 when air traffic added a compulsory reporting point at the Wilson Bridge. After that, there have been no changes until this early spring, post-accident, and we continue to work.
That was helpful information. So along with that.
Bye, Dan. Have a great day. Hope to see you again soon. So basically, the grand scheme of things, 1991, it was established in 86, so 39 years ago. Changed in 1991. And then not changed again until 2025 when a tragedy happened. This is why I say we're a reactive society. We don't change things unless shit goes wrong. And then Clark Allen, the FAA, and I don't know why all four members of the FAA aren't sitting together. They're skipping over that colonel like he's I don't know, like he's doing this. Either way. Yeah, nice play on words there, Dan. But here's what I'm not, why I will never, I just can't understand certain things. And like I said, I'll die on. The Army, the government, continuity of government and security. But what about safety? At a certain point, safety has to come above security. Like, yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I sort of understand that in a way, but like, if it's been brought up to you multiple times over multiple years, and this is just what that Clark Allen guy remembers. He seems like a relatively young guy. I mean, my age, late 30s, early 40s, tops, I would say probably 35 at best. So who's to say the person who was in his position before him didn't bring up these same concerns years ago that we just don't know about because we just haven't seen the data? Yeah, I'm like Squid. It bothers me they were even flying here in this space. Yeah, and I'm sorry, continuity of government, my ass. Fly a different route. Fly a different route. What does continuity of government even mean? Like, I know what continuity means. I wasn't meaning that literally. Like, continuity of government during a training exercise. The what? Huh? Route 4. Really? Change it. Change the fucking route. You didn't seem to have too big of a problem changing it in the spring of 2025. Keep it changed. Don't change it back. Problem
That-
solved.
At its inception, do you know or are you aware by looking at that back then, did DCA have a runway 1533 at that time?
I do not know without the chart in front of me.
Can anybody up there answer that question? Mr. Allen, do you know back that far if that runway had always been in existence there?
I wouldn't know that.
Mr. Fuller?
I'll take an IOU to get back to you and answer on that.
No problem. Okay. So my question would be, knowing what we know today with that route structure where it was would there have been an expectation that there would be consideration given to its proximity of the approach corridor to 3.3 and the departure corridor to 1.5 in this case?
I could take a shot at it. I think consideration of proximity and local traffic flows, patterns, or what the needs of air traffic are, is going to be highly site-specific and dependent on traffic flow densities within the airspace that may change over time. Not having specific knowledge of DCA, but broadly, the helicopter charts aren't specifically established to maintain separation. That would still rely on air traffic control to actively separate aircraft.
Which brings me directly to my next question. Was Route 4 procedurally separated from the approach path to runway 3.3 or the departure corridor from runway 1.5?
To my knowledge, no. I would have to defer to local air traffic as to what the consideration was when the routes were established or amended.
Understand. Mr. Allen, what's your understanding of that?
No, it is not procedurally separated.
Do you believe that the controllers, the control workforce at DC Airport Craft Control Tower has a similar understanding across the board that is not a procedurally separated route?
I can't speak for everyone, but I would say a majority do.
Okay. Mr. Dressler, did you or any of the other helicopter operators that you've been working with in the group there have an expectation that Route 4 was procedurally separated from fixed wing aircraft there?
No, we did not have an expectation it was procedurally separated, but our group rules of the road are pretty explicit in saying that we would never fly underneath an aircraft on final.
Okay. And Mr. Van Beckton, same question for you. Did the involved Army helicopter unit have any
Sorry. Like I know that dude is a medevac guy. Like I understand he has a very important job, probably one of the most important jobs considering, civilian medevac. You can do the math on that one. There's no mental gymnastics needed. But his phrase, we have to listen to what he said again, because listen just to what he said. It is the perfect way of putting it and sums up my entire mentality on operating in any airspace. I just can't. Chef's kiss.
Pretty explicit in saying that we would never fly underneath an aircraft on final.
Okay. And Mr. Van.
It seems like common sense. We would never fly under an aircraft on final. Why is that such a hard effing concept? Yes, right here. Why would they even want to? I have no desire to ever do that. Like so many air traffic incidents since this one, none before the one in Amherst, New York. What's going on? Why so many? This has been there's not any stats according to the stats. There's not any more incidents than there was in Q1 and Q2 2024 and 2023. Not a statistical difference. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. I was preparing for different stream for that. However, not a statistical difference. They're just being reported more. One, this is not a new thing. Our air traffic control issues have been a problem. There is a lawsuit. There is a lawsuit where air traffic control candidates they changed the hiring practices in 2015. And the way they were doing it before took a lot of people that were going to college and going to college specifically for entrance into the air traffic control field were now declined because there was too many white men. Not my words, the lawsuit's words. So as far as a personnel standpoint, this is not new. Personnel has been an issue for at least a decade. At least. I'd have to look back further than that, but from the lawsuit's perspective, it's been at least a decade. Technology has been an issue since the 70s. Our planes have gotten upgrades. The avionics in planes have gotten upgrades, but our air traffic control systems have not. So not only are we working with shorted staff that aren't being trained as well, in my opinion, because they're not going to college for this job anymore. They're off the street. Their testing is significantly less demanding. It's a multifactorial problem. There's no one thing. And then you have them working with outdated and old technology. It's like, and then you have everybody, you have the TDS that is real, and I don't need to get political, but you have people that are trying to blame it on one person and one person only. So every little thing is being reported more. Like the flyover problem in North Dakota. My opinion on that is, do you know how many times you've probably flown over or been redirected or rerouted? Even like this plane was rerouted to a different runway. Do you understand how many times that you probably have been in an aircraft and you've been diverted to a different runway and not even realized it? Because when things go right, y'all are none the wiser. But the minute things go wrong, now everybody's got a cell phone in their pocket. Everybody's got a camera. Everybody's got a phone. People post shit on social media and stories get out before the facts get out. And this is one of the reasons that I like doing this, because these are facts. This is not emotion. This is not spun in any way. This is factual information. So this is one of the reasons I like doing this. I like facts, because at the end of the day, feelings change minute to minute. Facts obviously haven't changed in this route since 1991. So how about doing the military flights when civilian aircraft, like say 3 a.m.? Yes. And there are times like civilians just don't fly. Yes, there's an occasional red eye, but like when I worked in Milwaukee, and our last flight came in at like 11 p.m. if everything, weather, and there was no delays, like 11 p.m. when I worked there. So like we'd be done by like midnight, and there'd be nothing flying in or out until like 6 a.m. Perfect opportunity to do training with those routes when there's no civilians in sight. Just a thought. I think there's a lot of attention because the military civilian link, and some people even question sabotage. Yeah, there was a lot of, okay. So if you really want to know one of the sabotage theories that were out there, this plane was coming back from Wichita from a high-level figure skating camp. 2 of the people on board were Russian figure skating coaches. So when those names got out, all fucking conspiracy theories started leaps and bounding over my fucking Facebook feed, even though I have friends that personally know those coaches. Like, I have Facebook friends who had those people as coaches. Like, those are figure skating coaches. Those are not Russian spies. Their son is an American citizen. Like, their son competes for the US. Like, it's just a weird, like, but yet I had those conspiracy theories flying all over my Facebook and all over Twitter. It's like, no, they're just figure skating coaches. They just happen to be Russian. But since Russia can't, a lot of Russian coaches come here. A lot of Russian coaches come here. Like when I skated, there was a lot of Russian coaches where I skated. The way it is. So.
Beckton, same question for you. Did the involved Army helicopter unit have any belief that Route 4 was procedurally separated? That if they were on that, they would be separated from fixed wing traffic arriving 3-3, departing 1-5?
Yes, sir, I did.
You had that thing, and was that a similar belief across the unit?
Yes, sir. Following the incident, I contacted many of my fellow co-pilots that were there, and everybody had the same assumption that we were not allowed to cross the departure and approach path of 1533 while on Route 4. We were always told to hold at the golf balls down by the sewage treatment plant just northeast of Wilson Bridge or at Haynes Point, which I'd done 100% of the time when I was on Route 4 and 3315 was active.
Okay, so that may have confused a little bit. So the belief there would have been that you did not believe it was procedurally separated. Because procedurally separated, just so we have an understanding, when I say procedurally separated, meaning if you fly that route at the altitude you're supposed to and an aircraft flies that approach the way they're supposed to, they will have appropriate standard separation and will miss each other if they're both flying their prescribed route, right? That would be procedurally separated. What you are saying is that you believe there to be a mitigation in place. You were aware they were not procedurally separated and that without a clearance from air traffic control, you would either hold at a particular area or request clearance to proceed across.
That's correct, sir. When I say procedurally separated,
Yes.
I meant that a procedure prevented us from crossing 1533 while on Route 4.
I should have prefaced that with the definition there of what I was saying. So thank you for that. Mr. Allen, do you know if consideration was ever given or there was ever a request made or a proposal made, I should say, for an alternate north-south routing to either replace Route 4 or alter Route 4 to help alleviate the conflict of where it crosses the Route 33 approach corridor?
There was discussion, like I previously mentioned, to either remove a portion of it or move Route 4 over towards the east, towards 295. But the zones also allow for north-south flow.
Do you know how high that proposal made it in the request chain at all?
Not high
Did you
enough.
receive any feedback or disposition of that proposed?
I don't know how high it went.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, do you have any awareness from your office? Did that ever reach your level?
So how high did it go? Not high enough. Not high enough. Not high enough. And here, Heather, you bring up a really good point. It seems to me partly because so much news is hidden or not reported on. That's what happens for sure here in Canada. Well, here it's buried. They report on it or they'll post it. But how many of y'all knew that this stuff was live on YouTube? There's a few channels covering it, but if it doesn't pop up in your like news section of your recommended or your homepage, like you're not going to see it. And then to just be able to like click on it, or it is on the NTSB's website, but like you have to search for it in the NTSB's website. Like but it's not reported on. And then when you do hear about it, you hear snippets. And although sometimes I wish I could do that and take an 8-hour day and condense it down into like a 45-minute synopsis, not being able to hear the whole thing, I wouldn't feel comfortable telling you guys what you think should be important. And that's the problem I have with news is when they write an article, and this is no offense to any journalist or reporter, like y'all have a job to do. I get it. This is not trying to call anybody out, just so we're all clear on that one. But like when you only have a 5-minute spot to report on a topic that is a large topic, you don't get all the information. And who are you to try to tell someone what is or is not important information? I've always had a problem with like school, like doing a book report. Oh, give us a summary. Well, who am I to tell you what you think is the most important information? I had a debate with like my 5th grade like English teacher. I'm like, when she said you wrote too much in your summary. And I literally told her, and I remember this because it's one of my first memories of like school where like I talked back to a teacher. It was, what who am I to tell you what you view as important? Who am I to tell someone? Like, obviously, Gail and I are on the same page. But when Roy watches some of this, he sees different things than I do. Spawn Trooper, and that watches some of this, and he sees different things than I do. He points out different things that I wouldn't have seen as important, but when he explains why he thinks they're important, it I was like, oh yeah, I never thought about that in that perspective. So who am I to tell people? So that's one of the reasons that when I look at an article, we look at like 4 or 5 different articles of the same thing. Because who am I to tell people what they should think is important? Because part of the reason I love doing these and talking to chat is because y'all see things differently than I do. That's why I hate echo chambers. Because if we all talked the same and thought the same, we'd never learn anything. So doing this, hearing y'all, what y'all think is important, yeah, we stop. Yeah, we listen to it faster to get through them talking a little faster. But like different viewpoint, yes, different viewpoints. The different viewpoints make it a fair discussion. Yeah, I don't and as much as I love the people who like give me a synopsis sometimes on like articles or documents, but then I read it for myself and I'm like, well, that was completely different than the way you made it sound. You kind of pointed out the things you thought were important based on your background, your experience, and your point of view, not what is important to everybody. And sometimes they don't pick out dissenting opinions like they should. I'm not like, so sometimes reading the whole document or listening to the whole thing, yes, can get a bit exhausting and time consuming, but at least we hear the whole thing. I give you my opinions on it too, because if we just watched it, it wouldn't be fair use. Yes, and that's why we need to look and read deep. Yes. And I know it's monotonous sometimes, but that's why we, we got to get a little pettiness. Like Clark, he's very knowledgeable, and I agree with some of the way he's answered questions. However, dude, like, get a sport coat. Your credibility to me and your professionalism goes down when everybody has a suit jacket on and you don't, and your shirt's not ironed. Like, to me, like, but your professionalism kind of, but that's a first impression, and his knowledge and his way of talking combats that first impression, but like, he looks disheveled.
No proposals to remove Route 4 ever reached my level. I looked back through the system service reviews and the corrective action plans developed for the facility, and there were no records of a request to remove Route 4.
Okay, thank you.
I'm trying to figure out what that other flag is.
Mr. Allen, one last question for you in this area, and then I'm going to pass it along. Who, from your experience working at DC Airport Traffic Control Tower, who is the primary user of the helicopter routes inside the Class Bravo airspace? Is it a real mix? I guess what I'm asking is this a mix of a lot of helicopter operators, or is it primarily the military using the routes? How is it split up there? Or is it just a total mixed bag?
I would say a majority would be the various military branches with some of the other users mixed in at a lower level.
And how about Route 4 that was being used that day? Who was the primary user of that, or users?
It would be the military.
Okay. All right, that's all I have for now. I'll pass it along to Van.
Okay, I'll be asking questions about helicopter operations in and around the national capital region. Colonel DeForest, could you describe the Army's mission in and around the national capital region?
Absolutely. And before I do, Chairwoman Homendy, Member Graham, Member Inman, families in the room, and those watching online, on behalf of the Army Aviation Brigade, as a husband and a father, I want to express my deepest condolences. This is something we think about every day, and your memory of the loved ones we lost are forever in my heart. The Army Aviation Brigade, specifically 12th Aviation Battalion, provides continuous, responsive rotary wing support to senior military and government leaders in the National Capital Region to enable continuity of government and continuity of operations missions. On America's worst day, our nation's leaders trust the 12th Aviation Battalion will respond on a very short notice. It's a no-fail mission that requires regular, realistic training within the National Airspace System, and that's to maintain unit readiness for when the unit is called upon.
Today, right now, 47% of our aircrew members in 12th Aviation Battalion are on mission lines waiting for that call. We're privileged to operate in the national airspace system in the National Capital Region. We have a very unique mission. We attract some of the very best across Army aviation, and we hold ourselves to a very high standard. Our mission involves both the zones and the majority of the helicopter routes in vicinity of DCA. And we see the routes and the zones as a risk reduction tool. They provide known altitudes and locations to deconflict with other aircraft. And I just want to be clear, there's others that perform a similar mission. So we view the helicopter route structure as a risk reduction tool.
I'm also glad. Okay, so this dude, I trust officers about as far as I can throw them, but I appreciate the fact that he acknowledged the families. I also appreciate that unlike this morning, or I say this morning, it was Wednesday, when someone acknowledged the families, they panned over to the families. I appreciate the fact that when he acknowledged the families, that the camera stayed on him. Thank goodness, because I'm sorry, there are children in the room, teenagers, family members, but still teenagers. Like, you don't need to. They're already going through enough being here, and yes, they are here voluntarily. No one, dragged them here. However, that still doesn't mean that you need to pan the camera on them. They are grieving. They lost people because of this, and I fully blame the Army for this. And as a vet, I know how military aviation works. They think they're the fucking shit. And military aviators are a little cocky, just a little. It's almost like I know. But we will see where this goes, because I don't know.
So do you consider the use of the routes essential to the mission?
Yes, I believe they are essential to accomplishing our mission safely.
And can you describe any types or categories of operations along those routes that are commonly used?
Now, can you be a little bit more specific on types of operations along the routes?
So you have mission essential operations, training operations, non-mission essential operations. So what would all those be considered essential?
And for the training, so the mission rehearsals that we do conduct, and I think we understand aircrew familiarity of the region. So knowing the altitudes, the terrain, the buildings, the hazards, that is absolutely essential. And those routes provide predictability to our aircrews. So for our
I don't like the fact that you're saying that flying under an approach path of a civilian aircraft is necessary. I disagree with you wholeheartedly. I don't need to have a top secret security clearance to tell me that is unfucking necessary.
mission rehearsals, yes.
Thank you. This question is from Mr. Dressler. Could you describe helicopter operations, non-military helicopter operations in the NCR, National Capital Region?
Certainly. Since 2001, all of the civilian helicopter operations are mission only, and they're comprised of law enforcement with various entities I mentioned, U.S. Park Police, FBI, Metropolitan Police Department, Prince George's, and Fairfax counties, to name the law enforcement I can think of, and then all of the medevac operators. So medevac is easy to explain, that we're transporting critically ill patients, usually from tertiary treatment facilities outside of the city, to some of the world's best trauma centers, including Washington Hospital Center, George Washington Hospital Center, and Georgetown. And the transport of those patients into those critical areas in a very ground traffic laden environment is a lifesaver day in, day out. On the law enforcement side, the law enforcement officers perform both patrol, and then they may, in fact, transition into operational status during an active pursuit of some kind, generally speaking, a priority call of a crime against person, meaning homicide, carjacking, etc. And those operations have no specific destination in mind. They're merely performing those orbits or those pursuits while in flight.
So for those common non-military operations, is it considered the Helo routes as essential for the completion of those operations?
Yes and no. By and large, non-military operators use zones, and there are a number of reasons for that. And one of those reasons is to deconflict with military operations who are primarily on routes. In the case of medevac, we may not know exactly where our start point is, and there may not be a convenient route to get a critically ill patient where they need to go. In the case of law enforcement, these were originally in the 80s called police zones. And the reason for that is because other traffic would be confined to routes and police would have the ability to patrol in those zones. So I think it's a mixed bag. Some of the routes, including 2 that were deleted after January 29, I would say are essential to our operations because they provide the safest way to transit east-west in the route structure. They're predictable. Zones, one limitation of the chart is that the altitudes are maximum altitudes. So for example, a zone altitude might be a maximum of 1,400 feet. And that doesn't afford as much predictability as some of the routes themselves are very altitude specific. Route 4 along the Potomac is one of them at 200 feet, at the 200-foot cap. But if you could imagine then that a zone could be a maximum of 1,400 feet, so you might have a helicopter.
And I remind you that this bitch that was flying this Helo never, ever, 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 ever got below 200 feet. Ever.
Helicopter operating at 1,200 as a police helicopter conducting FLIR operations. You might have us at 1,400 feet. You might have others at different altitudes, and that presents a challenge in the zones.
And that deconfliction, is that done by ATC, the controlling agency you're talking with, or is that all visual or ship to ship?
It is, because it's Class Bravo, it is primarily ATC. All of us provide an initial request, which sounds like our route of flight. So we might ask for Zone 5 to RFK to Washington Hospital Center, for example, and air traffic control will clear us for that route. That's that efficiency portion that is really essential. It cuts down on our radio traffic and gives us predictability. In this airspace, I think I mentioned it earlier, that we have the ability to talk on air-to-air frequencies, but unlike other cities, because the Class Bravo airspace surrounds Washington, D.C., it's very, very challenging to deconflict ship to ship. Instead, you can't focus on more than one primary thing. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a primary thing. So focusing on the tower frequency, on the helicopter tower frequency as a primary focus because it's so busy, doesn't afford you much time to call another ship and deconflict. That is different than other cities, including Baltimore, and where you might very well say, hey, I'm MedStar 2 and I'm lifting off of shock trauma, and then other people in the area will be able to deconflict with you. So greater than 99% air traffic control.
Okay, thank you. And when operating, do the non-military operators have special considerations when deciding to use a route, one of the Helo routes? Is there special considerations within the local operating area that helps you determine whether you to use the route or not?
I don't know of any other than individual company policies. So my company's policy after a near miss, unfortunately in 2017 with Black Hawk helicopters, my company restricted our ability to use anything between Key Bridge and the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. So we cannot use Route 1 or Route 4 because of the helicopter volume. We're also altitude limited. So by our operation standards, we cannot fly lower than 300 feet day or 500 feet at night. And so those are limiting factors that might vary company to company or unit to unit.
Thank you. Mr. Van Vechten, as a standardization pilot, what are the training standards for maintaining altitude on a particular route?
Pilots are expected to maintain their altitude plus or minus 100 feet.
And that's where the problem lies in when you're working, when you know you're going to be less, and he says it so confidently, which it's where my military side wants to just go tell him, sir, go fuck yourself, with all due respect. Plus or minus 100 feet, which is what the pilot in the last panel was saying. But when you're operating, when you know you're going to be within 500 feet of another aircraft, within 500 feet, not 500 feet, within 500 feet, and then your plus or minus 100 feet is acceptable to you, do you think that you might want to not have that plus or minus 100 feet? I know that's what your instruments and the math does, but maybe if you're plus or minus 100 feet, flying within 500 feet of a civilian aircraft might not be the best fucking idea. No, Heather. She was doing a just a training mission. So she was a full-blown pilot. Every now and then they have to do missions to basically keep up on skills. you're always training. Basically, everything that military does over here is training. Everything is training. Everything is training, training, training. So she had an instructor who was an expert and qualified to sign people off on that specific task with the night vision goggles, which is something that pilots don't do on an everyday basis. So that was something that she needed an instructor pilot for. So she was a fully qualified pilot. She was not a training pilot. However, what she was using with the night vision goggles was it was necessary to get a recall because they don't use them very often. So, do you think they were arguing? I don't know. I don't know.
If a Helo route with a defined ceiling of 200 feet, would those standards apply?
Yes, sir. I mean, I don't think there's any expectation that we can maintain an altitude plus or minus 0. There's too many limiting factors. So again, talking to other pilots, I think the reasonable expectation is that being off on altitude by 50 or 70 feet, one way or the other, would not lead to a catastrophic event.
Okay, so for a ceiling altitude of 200 feet, 250 feet would be acceptable as a training standard?
No, sir. I mean, if a pilot is continuously above the altitude, they're going to try to correct. I'm going to make them correct. It's where they stay above it where it's a problem. But we call it bracketing. So kind of above and below the altitude while you're trying to maintain a constant altitude.
Okay, thank you.
May I address that as well?
Certainly.
I hate to disagree, but at least on the civilian side, that is a hard altitude for us. We do not accept a plus or minus of 100 feet in the DCA route structure. That's maybe a commercial flight standard, but that is unacceptable and how none of our civilian members are trained in the DC airspace. So a 200-foot altitude or 300-foot altitude is a hard ceiling for us.
Army standards. Gotta love them.
Mr. Van Vechten, could you describe the purpose of the annual proficiency and readiness test in the Army?
Sure. It's to determine a pilot's ability.
I am thoroughly enjoying the fact that there is that medevac guy. I can't remember his name right now. I do have the list up, but it's on a different window. However, I'm thoroughly enjoying that not only is he there to provide what civilian helicopters do, but to push back on the armies. That might be acceptable for y'all fuckers, but that's not acceptable for us. That's not our standard. That might be the Army's way of doing things, but once again, that proves that military standards don't always work.
To perform the unit's mission.
And what could you go into a little more detail on what all that involves?
Yes, it includes the instrument flight evaluation, the standardization flight evaluation, a written exam, and a night vision goggle evaluation.
Okay. And is it common to conduct this evaluation at night on MVGs?
Yes, it is. The standardization flight evaluation does not give a mode of flight. The NVG, night vision goggle evaluation, obviously must be conducted under night vision goggles. The standardization flight evaluation, if conducted under the most demanding mode of flight, which is NVGs, will count for both evaluations. So you don't have to waste the blade time doing a daytime standardization flight evaluation and then going back out at night to do the same task under goggles. You can accomplish both at the same time.
Okay. Since we're talking about NVGs, can you estimate the percentage of night Army operations where NVGs are utilized?
Can you clarify, please?
Just like, are NVGs normally utilized during almost all Army night operations?
Yes, ideally that would be the case. I would much rather be aided with night vision goggles than unaided, of course.
And is NVG crew proficiency important?
Yes, it's extremely important. Night vision goggles is the most demanding mode of flight. And so that's what we would train to the most rigorous standards.
Can you recall what the requirements are for that?
As far as annual,
yes,
it's 9 hours semi-annual or semi-annual period, 18 hours total, and you must fly 1 hour of NVGs every 60 days to be considered current.
Okay, thank you. And for people to help everybody understand the benefits and limitations of NVGs, could you describe what some of those advantages and disadvantages of using NVGs are as from an operator perspective?
Sure. First, the advantages, the quite obvious ones. Best visual acuity while unaided is 2200. So where 2020 would be like good vision, your best visual acuity you're going to get while you're night unaided is 2200. So the ability to see is the #1 advantage with night vision goggles. It amplifies light, allows us to see in darker environments, and provides better acuity for the pilots. The negatives, depth perception, obviously is much more difficult to judge because we have monocular vision, whereas right now I'm using binocular vision, so it's much harder to judge depth perception. It was mentioned earlier, the limited field of view, so approximately 40 degrees compared to roughly 180 degrees, what I have right now. But it's also, it's easy to confuse ground lights with aircraft lights. You can see through haze, which is an advantage initially until you're fully engulfed in poor weather, and then it becomes a disadvantage. So those are some of the advantages and disadvantages.
And what about being able to see aircraft silhouettes? Do you just see point lights, or can you actually make out the shape of the aircraft?
Well, it really depends on the distance from the aircraft. Normally, I'm not close enough to make out the silhouette of an aircraft. So they mentioned earlier about looking underneath your goggles. So as you're flying night vision goggles and you see a light that is potentially a hazard, it's common practice to look underneath the goggles to verify what it is, because you could very easily confuse, say, a vehicle passing on Wilson Bridge as an anti-collision light as it goes across, or a vehicle on elevated terrain making a turn. It flashes into your eyes, so you must visually acquire what it is. So you really can't see the silhouette. Our goggles have trouble seeing blue and green lights, so the right side of an aircraft would be much more difficult to see. A red light is much brighter, and then white lights obviously are bright as well.
And how are the crews trained to compensate for the more narrow field of view?
By scanning.
Could you explain that a little bit more, please?
Yes. So we have a saying: we cannot increase our field of view, but we can increase our view of the field. So as I scan my head from left to right, I kind of move my eyeballs from left to right inside the goggles, increasing my view of the field. We try not to get tunnel vision or get fixation on an object. So we're constantly scanning to pick up different reference points to pick out objects in the distance.
And that's a common training technique.
Yes.
And you'll
So
see
this
me
question's-
doing exactly the same shit I did when I was taking tests in college, when I would have to do like human movements and like different positions and different muscle tests. Is we'd be like, external, internal, well, here. You saw me do it. And it's like, okay, turn your head and then turn your eyes too, because then it increases. So think about turning your head 90 degrees to the left if you can. And then now, if you have the ability, sometimes my nystagmus can pick up when I do this and I'll get a little weird. But now turn your eyes to the left too. So you increased your field of vision an extra 135 degrees just based on turning your head and your eyes in the same direction. It's a little trick of the math. Like, instead of just trying to avert your eyes or turn your head and keeping your eyes straight, it's move head and then you move eyes, and you can increase your field of vision. I mean, I would have thought it was common sense, but apparently the Navy or the Army trains it.
For Mr. Allen, from what you've heard,
Mr. McKinney,
Yes.
can you hold for a second?
Certainly.
I would ask that witnesses put away their electronic devices. If you are communicating with your party tables, you should not be doing that. Please put them away. If your party wants to ask a question or get information to you, you can ask it during the Q&A period. Thank you.
The use of night vision goggles by flight crews.
Skip
Would it
that.
benefit air traffic controllers to be trained on the advantages and limitations of NVGs?
Currently, air traffic control we don't get notified that they're using NVGs. We wouldn't know, as far as from an air traffic standpoint, operationally, what that would look like. I think we would need more input on their uses.
Would the knowledge of the NVG limitations affect how air traffic controllers handle the traffic?
Potentially.
Okay.
So why weren't they? So here's my question, and one question that I would ask, and I'm kind of been writing down like my questions and things that come to my head. But did they know that this mission or did air traffic control know that the pilots were wearing NVGs?
Can I add to that?
Certainly.
So it would generally be the expectation for air traffic that for Class B operations, all aircraft receive traffic advisory safety alerts, and air traffic provides separation services to all aircraft. We're also heavily dependent on see and avoid and relying on 91.113. I would refer to the 7110.65 Class B separation criteria for helicopter to helicopter would be that IFR or VFR helicopters are not separated from other helicopters. So it would be dependent on pilot see and avoid, independent of the use of night vision goggles.
Okay, thank you. I think I will pass my time over to Dr. Wilson.
Thank you. I want to go back to something that Mr. Allen said when we asked about moving Route 4, if there had been any discussions about changes to Route 4. You said that the response you got was something to the effect of continuity of government operations and security. And then it piqued my
Oxymoron, continuity of government operations. And Duncan, Idaho, thank you for the 5 Squid Pro Quo memberships. I appreciate you so much. And I have to figure out, I know there's a way for me to gift memberships. I just don't know how to do it. I'll have to talk to somebody who knows more than me, which is a lot of people. So yeah, I get that the drama has been exhausting lately. I only do Hail streams 3 times a week, and it's only if there's new documents or new information. I don't like to repeat the same information because it's redundant, and I just don't like to talk about people because I don't like to talk about people. I don't talk about people's mental health. I don't talk about people's looks. Like, I don't like, I call Fleesa because, and I call her a thunder cow because she made fun of my kid. I will call Bruce Forever Bubbles, and I will forever be a thorn in his side because he talked about my kid. But other than that, like Lisa or Leslie or whoever, I'm not going to sit here and make streams about her because I don't care. Like, there's like, you know, I don't, the drama, if there's new information, I will do that, but I don't. But I was talking to someone today, and there's like this whole thing on both sides is like a microcosm of society. We live in an all or nothing cultish society on both sides. If you're not with me, you're against me. There's no middle ground, and it's kind of fascinating. And I'm going to look into that psychological point of view a little bit closer because that's fascinating. There's some gift membership thing in the chat area, 3 dots. Okay. So you can get 10 free a month. I know I can't. Oh, I know I could at least do 5. I just don't know how, but I'll look. Let me look while we're playing this. But also this dude, I'm thoroughly enjoying, even though he doesn't have a sport coat and he looks unprofessional as F in relation to everybody else. I'm thoroughly enjoying what he has to say. And he looks like he's thoroughly annoyed with everything. If you watch his body language, and I'm no body language expert, but if you watch his body language when anybody in the Army is talking, he looks like he wants to throw something. It's quite entertaining.
interest, Colonel DeForest, because in the mission statement that you said, you mentioned continuity of government operations, and it made me think, was the Army, you or the Army, aware, or did you see any proposals that you were able to provide feedback on regarding changes to Route 4? It piqued my interest that the wording was very similar to what the response to DCA Tower was, and then the Army's mission.
Answer a question. Somebody answer. Somebody
That's
answer.
for you, Colonel DeForest. I apologize.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was for the colleague next to me. So that specific route is an option for our air crews, or it was an option. And when we look at our response times of our air crews in certain locations within the National Capital Region, so Route 4 was heavily used by our air crews on our mission rehearsals.
So my question was, were you aware of any proposals to make changes to that route?
The only proposal for a change that I'm aware of involves noise abatement, not necessarily lateral movement. So noise abatement was the only proposal that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, you mentioned when we were talking about radio transmissions and some of the difficulty with some of the operators, you mentioned both Muscle and Pat, that they, you might have more challenges with the radio communications with them. Are there any other concerns or challenges when Muscle and Pat are operating in the DCA airspace that raise concerns for controllers?
I think additional concerns are they do conduct a fair amount of training missions, new folks arrive on base or maybe come up from a National Guard unit or something that aren't as familiar with the airspace. So being unfamiliar in a high volume, high complexity airspace naturally has its own challenges.
Which means it's unsafe, and don't freaking do it. Oh, I'm so sick of everybody basically saying that this airspace is unsafe and it's unsafe. Route 4 is unsafe. Route 4 is unsafe. And then you get Colonel DeForest in here going, well, it's heavily used because it's important for government continuity. Excuse me? God, I got to get Flux on here because I really need to know if the Army is this stupid all the time, or is this just a one-off. We really need to talk to Flux about this because she's my Army girl. Like, yeah. Sometimes I'm like, was the Army really this stupid all the time? Like, y'all think you heard the civilian air or the medevac guy be like, we never fly under landing routes. Like, we never fly under a landing aircraft. Like, I wish somebody would have, or I would have written down the timestamp of that, because I want to make that a short, because that is like premium, like, that's not premium content, but that's the truth. We don't fly under landing aircraft. And you got the Army here going, it's heavily used because it's important to government continuity. Government continuity. What the fuck does that mean? That's an oxymoron if I've ever heard one. And hey, Lori, how are you? Congratulations on your membership. Yeah, and crayons not involved, not our fault. Maybe you should share your crayons next time, because it sounds like they need some, because they're just licking windows at this point. And their leadership is not helping.
Mr. Van Vechten, or perhaps Colonel DeForest, do you have a response to that, or some additional information, insights that you want to share? Does that surprise you that there might be more concerns when particularly Pat is operating in the DCA airspace?
What I would add is our participation in specifically the DC Rotary Wing working groups. That has not been raised to our, at least the unit level, that there was a concern with the Pat call sign. And I'll hand it over to Mr. Van Vechten.
Yes, I was a member of the DC Helo route user working group. Some of the concerns that were brought up were noise abatement was the main one. And then when police and MedStar operating in the zones, just keeping military rotary wing aircraft out of the zones. That was a couple of the concerns that they brought up, because we know that when a police helicopter is in pursuit, both people inside the aircraft are probably looking inside or looking down in the street, and they're not looking outside the aircraft. So we avoided the zones that were active. And anytime Falcon, which is the DC Metro, was active in a zone, we would avoid those zones. But I was not aware of any requested changes.
Mr. Allen, going back to the proposal to make changes to Route 4, do you recall when that proposal was made?
We had attempted it when I was part of the helicopter working group in the 2021-2022 timeframe.
Okay, thank you. And was there a documented proposal that you recall?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Mr. Dressler, we've talked about concerns about certain operators in the DCA airspace. From your perspective, are there any operators that you feel cause concern for your operations?
Unfortunately, yes. And I don't take any pleasure. I'm a former Army aviator, and I'm a retired Air Force officer. And I don't like to say that that the Air Force First Heli is a concern. And I really don't like saying that 12th Aviation is a concern. But it was a widespread concern, and it was noted to the battalion commander previous to the current one in about 2022 or 2021 by a member of our group, that there was a significant issue with both training and attitude toward operations within the DC airspace.
Oh, attitude. Oh,
and could you expand?
attitude.
So
Shocker.
How did that affect your operation?
Well, when you combine that with our 2017 near miss, my company and the other operators in the area either curtail operations, or there's not much we can do when we have a medevac patient and we're trying to get a critically ill patient where we need them to go. But our best answer is to maintain extra vigilance. It's an extreme challenge, especially when those aircraft are not usually transmitting on ADSB, and I can't see them on my traffic system, and all kinds of challenge inherent there. I think our best answer is extreme vigilance. I know in our company policy, we fly as high as possible So we'll take the maximum of any of the zone or route altitudes. And the air traffic controllers, we have a fantastic relationship with them and have always had that, where we can ask for something different. So if I need to ask for a deviation, and the same with all of our members, we're not bound by that, and they'll grant those requests whenever possible. The best answer I have for you is see and avoid, which is the basic tenet of every aviator on the planet.
Yeah, apparently not this time, though.
Thank you. I'm going to jump to a different question because that's twice now that I've heard see and avoid being used. So Dr. Kastner, if you could talk about see and avoid, what are some of the benefits of it from a pilot's and an air traffic control perspective, but also what are some of the limitations of see and avoid?
See and avoid, what's a benefit of it? Avoid, obvious. Thank you.
Well, see and avoid is one of our most basic, familiar cognitive perceptual faculties when we use our eyes, ears, and attentive minds to look out for hazards, anything that might get in our way. The advantages is we have a lifetime of experience of using it. So we don't need the user's manual. And then comes the problems associated with it in that our ability to pay attention is very narrow. Even our focused vision, if you hold your thumb out at arm's length, that's about how much you can see in focus at any one time. You can hold a book or a page behind it, and if you stare right at your thumbnail, you find that you can't read the words even beside them. So that's quite limited right there. So we get good at knowing where to point it, and we also benefit greatly from any kind of clues, hints, tips, where to point our eyes in a complex situation. And the more we know, the more information we get, the better we get at it.
Oh, and Tammy, tomorrow I'm doing an update stream about a bunch of other cases, and I might read some of the more of those medical fraud docs. I'm not sure. I haven't had the time or energy to edit videos that I've recorded. Sometimes a live stream is so much easier to go through. But I actually think we have for about an hour left on day one. I am going to cut it short for today. We are at 3 hours. I have to get going. I have to cook dinner. I haven't eaten. I had a protein bar and some beef jerky today, and I'm getting kind of hungry. And I also have to use the little girl's room. But Tammy, I will be posting some documents. There's a new doc well, it's not new. It's from March, but I just now found it because Kentucky's not really up to date with their docs, but it's a competency motion for Sean Steins, the Kentucky the judge who the sheriff in Kentucky who unalived the judge on camera, and also some other updates and court dates and possible things, as well as possibly going over some medical stuff. I might make it 2 streams. I'm not really sure. That way I can separate them out and post them as videos on their own merit. But we will, since the Discord's been kind of boring lately, I might post some gym videos in there too. I posted a couple of working on some snatch work since I know that like my Discord is so boring. Nobody posts in there. But yeah. So there should be some new documents in there. There's a couple of docs for the Sarah Boone for her lawyer who wanted out, or her motion for not wanting a lawyer. And then in the Anthony Shea case, there is some updated documents for depositions. He wants to depose a lot of people. So, and then Sarah Grace has some hearings. So we will talk about it all tomorrow, and I'll kind of give you the updates on timelines of when things are going to court. There's not a whole lot going on in a lot of these. And also I will give you an update on the Andrew Brigida versus the Department of Transportation lawsuit, and a couple other federal lawsuits that don't involve what the Hales. So okay, I will show you real quick before we go. For those of you who aren't on the Discord, we are going to stop sharing that. For those of you who aren't on the Discord, this is what a Olympic lift snatch technique work looks like. And I have to find the video because let's see, there we go. I think this one. We'll play this one. Phrasing. It's not bad phrasing. It's what it is. Show in. See if I can do. Hold on. I'm gonna see if I can open it in a separate window. Nope. We'll play it here. I'm just gonna have to share my screen. There we go. So this is what I was working on last week, Thursday. And I'm going to mute it because the music, or lower it because the music. Whoop. I don't know why it stopped. There we go. That was what I was working on last week. So, yeah. All right. I will see you guys on the next one, probably tomorrow, like 10 a.m. I might have to run some errands in the afternoon, so I'm not really sure what time. However, we will, I'm going to see if there's anybody I can redirect y'all to. Let's go. Customization. Redirect. Who is live right now? Kwame Brown. Let's see, it's Flux. Is anybody? I think I'm going to end up leaving you guys to your own devices. Nobody is live. Ixmill is live. We'll go to him. All right. Good. Sorry, that's like 25 pounds under what I'm used to. So we're it's slow, but I have you guys set up to redirect. Y'all have a great day, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.